Sorry, I didn't recognize you there, city recorder.
Oh,
I know.
got her haircut.
Like I was telling you, they were.
All right. Okay, let's do this. Good evening and welcome to the North Bend City Council work session for February 10th at 4:30 in the council chambers. We go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask our stand-in city recorder to help us with roll call. You can start with Councilor Jones.
Jenny Jones.
Here. Right? That's all I have to say.
Yes.
I'm looking more where the checkoffs are.
Okay.
Mr. Garbone, I know who's in order, but. Mr. Garbone.
Here.
Isabelline McKee.
Present.
Barbara said she was gonna be online, but I don't see her yet. Kim Slater
Here.
and Melinda Torres.
Here.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and then move to item agenda number 3, which is public comment. I know we have one person here in person and I don't see any online, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We have Joseph Monahan.
Joseph Monahan, come on up, and before you begin, I always like to just make sure I say thank you for participating in public comment this evening. This public comment period is an essential part of local government meetings. Each person has 3 minutes to speak, and our governing body takes the input into consideration. However, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't a time for us to have dialogue, but rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city administrator and city recorder are taking any notes of any action that is needed. So when you're ready.
Okay, so Joseph Monahan, 2340 Lombard Street, North Bend. Jessica, thank you for calling me today. There's been a lot going on with the URA and wanting to increase the indebtedness of anywhere, up to $45 million for, the main topic has been workforce housing and things like that, and the way the system worked, it had to go to different taxing districts, and the school committee was put into a tough position where they had to vote on it. I've watched the meetings, I've read the stuff. They asked a lot of questions, and some of the questions that they asked, they could not be answered. For the $30 million that was being talked about, I'll take that number. How many apartment units or housing units were gonna be built? How many were gonna be 2 and 3 bedroom? There could not be an answer. They were asked to approve $30 million for housing where there was no number of how many housing units were gonna be built. Then you read farther into it, there's part of this money was also gonna be for a new city hall. Granted, we may need a new city hall, but everyone's talking about workforce housing. Some people were there talking that they can't find employees for their above minimum wage jobs. Looking at the price of these units in the $30 million or $35 million, you're looking at $428,000 a unit if you go with the number of 70 that was said. That's a lot of money for an apartment. They're saying the average rent's gonna be 30% of their income. That income, just taking ballpark low for a teacher or a nurse, you're looking at $1,800 to $2,000 a month in rent. So that's not really what people are looking at when they're wanting housing. They're wanting stuff that's being over at the old Bangor school property. We need workforce housing, we need housing. Not sure how we're gonna get to it, but this $30 million for 70 apartments is not what I see happening to help this community. Granted, the blight has to be taken care of, but that's not what, you look at long-term. That's not gonna help. There's, a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of questions. Is the tax base gonna be frozen? How are we gonna pay for city services? Those questions were asked, and I never saw any of the answers on that. So maybe the city, could take some of those questions and bullet point them out. This tax base freeze, no, it's only gonna be frozen on the downtown core, or yes, the tax freeze goes and it takes into the whole city. Then how do we pay for city services? Those are things people want to know. And if we could work on getting that information out, it would help a lot more for everyone to understand where we're trying to get to. So, all right.
All
thank you.
right, thank you. All right, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all we have for public comment. And I do just,
Yeah, is that now?
yeah.
Did you sign up for it?
Yeah, I'd like to get.
Yeah, he's out in the hallway, yeah.
Yeah, we've got one more, sure, we've got one more. And while we're getting that form too, just,
No, no,
I
no,
will
it's, not everyone understands the process, you're okay.
let Mr. Monahan know that obviously during public comment, it's not a time for us to engage. But I do think that on the agenda, we're going to be talking about some of the things that you asked, some of the questions. And we do have that on our agenda tonight. So if you have time and you can stay for it, then
I think I'll end up watching it at home.
sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Okay, I'm
Thank you
teasing.
for watching
No,
our TED Talk.
and that's why we have it recorded. So work sessions and council meetings always, so people can go back and watch them at their leisure. So hopefully we'll hit on a lot of the things that you answered or asked tonight, we can address, so.
He wants to go home and eat dinner.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the technology that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah, so,
I can watch it at work when I'm getting food.
yeah. All right, so we do have one more public comment. That's Miss Kelly Dasher. If you want to go ahead and come on forward. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. If you haven't been to public comment before, each person has 3 minutes to speak. And we have our city recorder usually start the timer once you start. This isn't a time for us to necessarily engage with you, but we listen and we we have our city manager and city recorder take notes so that those questions or comments that you have can be addressed at a later point. So
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm really nervous because this is my first time speaking in front of the city. Well, I'm here as a business owner representative. It's Kelly's Home Solutions. I live in North Bend, and I want to help the city renew and revitalize along with home revitalization. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it and step out from the comfort and just start doing something. You know, I find solutions in housing. I've been involved in housing for 18 years. I know a lot. Growing up, I know a lot about building and repairs, and now I know a lot more paperwork involved on the other aspect side. So I know low-income housing. I'm involved with North Bend Housing Authority as a board member there, and I'm on the city planning board as well here. I'm also an ambassador for the chamber. So I've been out there in the community, been involved with as many people as I can. And I believe I can help find a solution to the urban renewal development. Somehow, some way, get involved with more people, possibly fundraising somehow. I've already stepped in the field asking investors, so I can get out there more and try to contact more of those people as well. So I'm really concerned, you know, with the community, because I really love North Bend. I really do. I enjoy living here. And I want to grow with the city. I want to grow and revitalize and make it pretty and nice for people to come, because that's what we want. We want people to come and grow. So I'm here to help.
All right.
I wish I could take this whole time to go into a further review, but I'm here to help.
Thank you.
I have a website, I have phone number, I do short sales, whole sales. I can do above what a realtor can do.
Yeah.
So I'm more investing in help, and I help specialize in foreclosures where I help the homeowner save their home. So that's how I help homeowners revitalize. their home, so. The bigger and better, so I'm ready to step into a bigger opportunity. Appreciate your time.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. We
you.
appreciate that. Okay. All right. Seeing no other, I think that concludes our public comment. So we will go to item number 4, which is, it is time again for the city administrator's annual performance evaluation process. So we've got our city attorney online here. Hi, Mr. Wolf, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Good afternoon or evening, Mayor and Council. Yes,
I'm going to ask our city recorder, Mr. Dunham, tonight if he has access to turn up Mr. Wolf's volume just a skosh. It's a little,
Skosh.
yeah. See if
Is
we
this
can
any better?
turn it up
And we
just,
can read it.
there we go. We can hear you, it's just a little bit, your mic's a little low.
is this any better?
Not great, no. But it's you, probably not us.
No, it's us.
Oh, never mind, it's us.
I've seen there's some kind of setting or bar or something on Equalizer that I've seen.
Because he's got
They
the
do.
speaker audio box to 100, so
No,
that's good.
it's like it's like a digital thingamajig, like, you know, the musicians, what, like a soundboard, it's like a digital soundboard, and they move things, and I've seen them do that, and so it's a thingamajig to me,
Okay,
so.
we can
You make it work.
we can probably make it work, worst case scenario here.
We'll just need to be on.
We're gonna-
so, me.
Yeah. Mr. Dunham's checking one more area to see if we can turn up the volume, but we can go ahead and start if you want to go ahead. We'll listen intently and watch the closed caption.
Okay, very well. So yeah, we've got the city administrator annual performance review right around the corner per his employment agreement. The deadline is April 1, so we're ahead of the game to some extent as it's February 10th. And so what I'm hoping to accomplish tonight is I guess a couple of things. A is get buy-in from the council on the form or the criteria upon which you all will do your assessments. And I've included the form that was used last year, and it's very similar to the one that was used the year prior. And what this form is, how it is structured, is that it's got essentially 2 sections. Section 1 is the management and leadership and kind of the typical performance evaluations you would see for employee annual reviews. And then section 2 are the city's strategic goals and achievements. And then those 2 sections have a weighted score. So the section 2 on the council's strategic goals and achievements are weighted 75%, and section 1 at 25%. So what I'm hoping to do is either get some buy-in from the council that yes, you want to continue down that path, or no, you want to either make some edits to that, some tweaks to that, or do some sort of overhaul. And then the next thing that I'd like to discuss is then when are you going to complete these, and when will the review be delivered?
Okay, so we need to be looking at one, if, are we happy with the current form? And do we want to make any changes to that? And then 2, kind of a timeline, because you said usually it's due April 1st.
It needs to be completed by April 1st.
By
So
April 1st.
we have a couple more meetings to actually, I mean, we could, in March, the first meeting in March would be about the last time that the council would want to review the form and the criteria, because then you all have to complete it, you all have to get it to me, and I have to, along with you, the mayor, consolidate the comments to find the relevant and I guess the relevant comments and the consistent comments. And then we do the math on the scores. And then it gets delivered. Then you all deliver that to your administrator
Yeah.
at another meeting.
So, so when I look at, and so we'll kind of go to the council here for some comments. You know, performance reviews are always just like really tricky, and especially in our role as,
7 bosses for one.
7
person.
bosses, 1 person, and our interactions with him, the staff, aren't the same. You know, many of us like don't go through, you know, like I know pretty much what David does throughout the day, but like that might not be like your relationship with him, or no, we've got Melinda who's new
Yeah,
on
that's-
staff,
that's why I
right?
was like,
Yeah, you're like, communication, you know, is one of them. It's like you know, how can you best answer that if
Yeah.
you are still learning, even your role as a counselor, and what the city administrator's role is. So I think we definitely need to kind of like take a look at these. Are they still meaningful and effective? And is there other ways? I know that the city manager every couple of years has a 360 feedback through ICMA. Is this year one of those times?
Yeah, we actually had already talked at the management level, so they're expecting that, so this is my cycle year that I do it. I'm not required to, it was done in like 5-year segments, but once you become a credentialed manager, then we're good after the 5 years, but, so I just elect to do it every 3 years regardless, for my own personal growth and feedback. So the department heads are already expecting that it's coming their way, and so.
So is that something that, so you have this form, you have your department heads fill it out, and then is that something that we can have before we're doing the review process?
So it's actually administered third party through the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. So it's 100% anonymous in the sense that you don't know which department head. The last go round, the council was asked to participate in it. However, the council feedback on that particular form was the same as sort of what I'm hearing is that we can't answer a lot of these questions because we don't interact, meaning that there is not a 360 out there that we as public administrators have found that is the get all. There's also lots of debate on whether or not they have found the ideal form. I think we've gotten pretty doggone close to it. And so the 360 looks at my department heads, peers, external, direct reports, and then managers. Well, we toss the council and the managers because where else do you put them? Because I don't actually have a manager per se. And so 3 years ago, that's what we did. And so, and then it does whatever gizmo it does, and then the person from the college calls and goes over it, and then I send it out, and I've posted it in the past right to our, city administrator website, so.
And when you say college, you don't mean like our local college?
No,
it's
it's actually done, there's only a couple that are approved, so there's assessments, but the Carl Vinson Institute of Government is at the University of Georgia, and so they have created the Gov 360 as an assessment. I've looked at the others and they don't even make sense as to, they're not even geared to government, they're not even close.
So does that fit in with our timeline if we start setting dates of if we need to make any changes to this form, and then when we task the council with filling out the form, will we have access to the 360 sometime in March? Or
The finalized version?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be the 360. So the
I feel like you
department heads
posted
only-
your last one. I feel like you posted actually on your administrator's page, your 360 from the
Yeah, it's
last one.
actually online.
Yeah,
The-
so we
the
should
world
be able
can
to
actually
read it
watch
before we can do it.
Um,
Yeah.
And so it only takes the department heads a week, and then it takes the university a week, and then we get their final report.
And their report includes the comments that the staff made and whatever else?
Yes.
Just a question, does this cover the year 2024 specifically? Or is it a fiscal base or what?
which the
The
review
review.
the council's doing. This is done annually, so the last one was done.
April
May?
last year.
April?
It was done, I think, at the end of March of last year, so this
Okay.
one
So
is
the one in
roughly,
the one in our packet is just one for reference from last year's review. And then the new review will be, yeah, we're looking at 2024.
yeah, roughly March of 2024.
2024 specifically.
2024 specifically,
Okay, well
yeah.
then we're out of it, because we really didn't.
You just have to go back
we
and watch all
weren't
the videos.
Part of that. 2024.
Yeah, in the past, we have had new counselors
Do what they can.
do
you
what
know,
they
if
can.
you have any thoughts.
And if they, and Mr. Wolf, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Slater's saying, hey, if we're asking these questions about the city manager's performance from 2024 and we weren't there, if I recall in the past, we still say, fill out what you're comfortable with or put, NA if you're not sure. But we would still have them participate, correct?
Yeah, and so the eval period is actually roughly March of 2024 through the present. So it's not just the calendar year 2024.
So say that one more time.
The review period is March of last year until the present.
Okay, so it really is,
There,
So we
you
have a 3-month period.
yeah, so you're gonna have to just do your best,
Okay.
although,
That was my question.
Yeah.
Where is
Between
it?
the lines.
So
yeah.
I have a question. So I like the content and the sort of purpose of the sections, but what I felt was wanting in our process before was that I'd actually like to know the perspectives of the other counselors. And I think the process was we submit our papers and then the mayor and our attorney distill those and find very little in common in the comments. And so we just get numbers and comments. And I really wanted to know the other people's perspectives, so I was hopeful that we would be able to share all of our comments and read them together. I mean, I think that's an executive session, but I'm not getting that far. I'm just saying, I would deeply appreciate other people's perspectives because our interactions are quite different. The number of times we call, the questions we ask, all of these things are different. And that's my request.
Mr. Wolf, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so great point. And potentially one option is to essentially hold an extra executive session where in the first one, the mayor and I come with the consolidated form and the council can consider making adjustments or adding comments that a majority of the council feel would be appropriate to have in there in each particular section. And we could either, I suppose, do that at one and have some longer discussions, and then you have the completed evaluation that then you deliver. Or you could
Yeah, I'd
have a
like,
second meeting.
so the last time we did this, I felt unprepared and rushed as we all tried in a moment to have unifying themes. And I felt like without being able to read other people's comments beforehand or in a way that, we're protecting the privacy, all that stuff, I felt really rushed and underprepared to look for commonality and, so I think I would like this if other people agree.
I think that we can accommodate that and have and not limit it to one executive session if we need to. What do you think, Council President? Yeah? Yeah. So right now, you're looking for feedback from us on the actual form. Is there any changes that we want to make on the actual form? And then we need to kind of go to some scheduling.
The rubric, as it were.
The
We're looking at a
rubric.
rubric.
And the way it's broken down is, there's, the first part is management and leadership practices, 25%. And then you've got,
It's mostly.
it'll be an
goals.
electronic, it'll be an electronic form where we pick like the rankings. Is that how, like, when it actually comes to us, does it say like 1 through 4 type of thing?
Yes, you have two options. One is to print out a hard copy, and then your city recorder gets this, sends this to you electronically, and you can complete it that way.
Is everybody comfortable with electronic, to fill it out electronically?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Excuse me,
And,
maybe.
so
So I
there's,
would suggest if the form looks okay,
Computers
and
say.
potentially the council wants to have a second executive session if needed, then I would suggest the first meeting be your first meeting in March, so that if a second one is needed, you have a meeting on the books already.
and so, that's the 11th, that's the week of the 10th and the 11th.
Which would mean we have
Yeah.
homework before that to fill out
Yeah.
electronically.
Now, and would we be able to, that is the week that I'm in Washington DC. So, but if it's we can have a special called executive session and even do it over Zoom, right?
Yes.
So we aren't locked into necessarily doing that on like the 10th or the 11th.
So you have the form to be done by the 11th?
Well, we're looking at that right now.
Okay.
Are you, so Mr. Wolf, you're saying you'd like to have an if we got the form filled out electronically and have our first executive session somewhere before the 10th or 11th of March, correct?
Somewhere in there would seem to make sense.
Okay, because is that something that we could work through our city recorder scheduling that? Or do we want to like pick a date right now?
You could do either.
Okay, because I'm hoping we can pick a time where we could have that executive session via Zoom, maybe around like March 5th is like a Wednesday. And we can kind of, we need to take into considerations the work schedules, and Mrs. Schultz's or Councilor Schultz, has, wouldn't probably be able to do anything before 4:30 p.m. But like, for example, if she's available on Wednesday the 5th at 4:30,
Well, that's just. when
or
she gets
because
home,
we have
right?
our normal work sessions at 4:30, so I know
Yeah.
she can do 4:30.
Okay.
But let's say she's at 4:30, and just kind of a verbal consensus from you right now, would 4:30 on the 5th, if that was something to be with if Councilor Schultz was available, would you be able to do a Zoom executive session to go
Yes.
over that?
The 5th of when?
March.
At the ISM? Let me see. At 4:30?
Yeah. We don't know for sure if Councilor Schultz could do that, but let's say that she could, then that could be like the first.
Well, that's a Wednesday.
Yes, so we would be doing this just Zoom. And it would be an executive session under the discussing personnel matters.
I could be misremembering, but I feel like Councilor Schultz has a regular Wednesday night thing.
Well, I think Jessica can reach out to.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
what
so
I'm,
we can-
because,
so Wednesday,
yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere in there, but right now Wednesday. Okay.
So if our acting city recorder could help remind me to we'll contact her. If not, then we could look at some other evenings and get that sorted out. So Mr. Wolf, say that would be like the first go, like that would be then and what I'm hearing our Counselor Jones say is that she's thinking she might need more than just one executive session.
I'm just saying, I wanted to hear other people's comments. I wanted to have enough time to sort of read and absorb them and have a discussion. If that takes one session, that's great. I'm just saying I felt like I missed out on other people's comments, and, I felt like it was rough, and,
Well, can the counselors get everybody else's comments?
yeah, why can't we
before?
just Why can't we just see all of each other's comments? Before the meeting? I mean, it moves our deadline back, but so what? You know? Like, I don't think we need to have a go time for when we can see one another's comments.
Yeah.
Unless that makes it a meeting. Unless reading other people's comments makes it a meeting, you know?
How does that fit into the public meeting status?
That's what she's trying to say.
I mean,
Yeah, that's
it's sort of
exactly
like
what I'm trying to say.
Emailing
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and forth and whatever, so.
I mean, if we're gonna share them, I think it would have to be in an executive session.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Does our city attorney have a,
yeah.
please do that voice?
So that is by far the safe approach.
Okay, okay.
I don't think I've ever been asked whether that would be a public meeting of sharing a performance review with other counselor comments. But if the idea is to just have the executive session and folks can have their own review there and discuss what their comments were or what they want them to be, then that is appropriate for an executive session.
So here's what I'm thinking, because I want everybody's individual input without others influencing it at first to fill out
Yeah,
the form.
yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
appropriate. And then you'll send them to Mr. Wolf, and then he and I will meet to really kind of look for the common themes. But I like what you're saying, it doesn't feel cohesive usually when we're just like, there's like 3 things that match here, like we're all like, sometimes it almost feels like people are looking at completely different reviews. And then having a well-led executive session, I think will help us, and having the full, so at that executive session, when we have it, we can ask Mr. Wolf to provide everybody's form and discuss that and say like, oh, because then you can kind of get into a little bit more conversation about like, actually, this is what I meant when I said this comment, and maybe find the commonalities.
Yes,
It's like,
and,
okay, this is
and
where I'm going.
also we'll get the 360 even before that.
Yes.
Like we will have the
Yeah,
360 in tandem with filling out our forms.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe maybe this executive session, once we, maybe I'll work with the city staff to kind of figure out, and Mr. Wolf's schedule, maybe it doesn't even have to be on Zoom. Maybe it can be here in person, which would be even like better. I just would like it to
Yeah.
be before I
I agree.
leave for DC. So it might be better, and then, yeah.
I have just an informational question. For those of us that are not here for the last 2 years, I think the structure is fine and excellent and really focuses on the strategic planning and the goals and things that we put together. But I wonder if somebody could go through and say, this is complete, this is in process, you know, that type of thing. So we understand which of these things are still out there or
As far as goals, strategic goals?
well,
Yeah,
in
David
the
usually
area, you know,
fills out
they'll have
a
several things underneath it, and it
Yeah.
says one about, a
So-
sewer study,
Yeah.
perform sewer rate, and present the options to increase the rate infrastructure. I think that one's complete.
I'm gonna have our city managers chime in here on that one.
So, thanks, Madam Mayor. On an annual basis, the staff and department heads do a document of status updates on the goals. The mayor uses that actually for the basis of her State of the City address, which she presented last week. I then create a self-eval, all-inclusive, that then gets sent to the governing body.
So we'll have the 360 and the self-evaluation in tandem or before we have our evaluation that we fill out, then we will have an executive session
To review.
to
it.
review it all. Okay,
Yeah,
great,
and then we
perfect.
can,
And we can talk about
we
each
can
other's
discuss
comments.
it during that time.
Yeah.
I think that, and you know what, Counselor Jones, I think what I'm hearing you say, it's not necessarily even the fact that it's more meetings, but it's being able to really understand the comments that people are making and where they came
Yes,
from and
yes.
finding. So I don't think
Yes.
it's necessarily that we need to have more. It just needs to be, instead of like, here's how we merge this together.
Yes,
And
yes.
have a collective response.
Yes, well, and there's, I mean, like, we already are operating under extreme time constraints for every meeting we have,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, getting the information beforehand, as well as in this moment, it would be nice to make sure we have a nice amount of time.
Yeah.
Not just,
I like,
That's why you put the executive session on a non-meeting.
I don't.
yes, okay, yes, yes.
So I know that's one more meeting for everybody, but we can figure it out. We'll check Schultz's schedule and we'll see if we can maybe even get it in person. If not, we can have a good meeting on Zoom and we'll have the documents. Is that enough direction, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, the last piece would, I just need a few days to crunch the numbers and try to, and talk with you, Mayor, once we receive the individual assessments. So if we could put a deadline of maybe the end of the month.
The end of February-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and so,
Responses have to be back by February 28th.
yep, our acting city recorder this evening to let our city recorder know that we're gonna wanna get that form out and then ask the counselors to have it back by, you know, let's say Thursday, the 27th. And then that way we have the 28th to make phone calls if we're missing the form.
Sounds peachy.
Sound good?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Sounds good.
Thank you, yes.
All right.
When are the final dates here?
So we don't really know, because we need to confirm with Mrs. Schultz, or Counselor Schultz, on when that executive session will be. But my guess is the city recorder will get the evaluation sent along electronic to us somewhere in the next week. And then that we're gonna wanna have them turned in by the 27th of February,
27th.
okay? And then we're gonna shoot for a meeting in an executive session somewhere between March 3rd and, between the 3rd, 4th, or 5th. We need to confirm schedules. Would the rest of you be able to meet in person instead of Zoom if it's, okay,
Sure.
Monday or Tuesday,
yeah. What's better, 4:30 or 5:30? What's better, 4:30 or 5 or, okay.
Takes me away from the office either way.
All right, I think we got a plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Look at us getting things done. Okay, so that takes us to number 5 on the agenda. That's our public safety update on homelessness in North Bend. We've got our chief here coming on up. I hear a slight
Yeah, I feel,
feedback.
pull your microphone towards you and turn
Is it this guy?
Barbara's away. No, pull that towards you, use
Okay.
that mic,
Is that me hearing this?
use that mic, and then maybe,
Or just me?
Turn that one.
Thank you, Chief Mitz, for being here. I think it's, maybe turn this one on. I'm glad that you're here updating us tonight.
Please. do.
I am very anxious to hear what you have to say. I don't know if anxious is the right word.
Okay,
anticipating.
so, I just, basically just kind of want to cover, what we've been experiencing, and a little bit about that, and then just leave it up to any questions you have about any of the direct thing. Statistics, I didn't really bring any numbers of calls. I think the thing, how statistics relate to our work is that we really encourage, when we see something, that we go after that particular area that's affected in the city. And sometimes that relates to the homeless population out there and any of the issues that are surrounding those areas. And so as we do that and concentrate more, that creates a larger number as it relates to that. But one of the things that I would encourage you to look at is that our homeless counts in the area that are performed annually provide kind of a picture as far as what the size of that population is. It's not perfect, but again, those resources are going out and actually making contact with as many of those people as they possibly can. One of the things that I wanted to cover was just basically, primarily, was how is our camping ordinance working?
Yeah.
How are those areas performing within the city? And I can report to you that it has really essentially been a status quo since we enacted that ordinance, identified the areas in the city. I still feel to this day that it's, that what we have is working. I have not seen any type of, any level of failure as far as what we're doing and the areas that are affected. We have been working, I know currently right now, our public bathrooms, they're hit. I think it's, primarily they may be people that are homeless, but those situations also involve people that are, they've got some other health issues, whether it be mental health or not, and they're struggling. But those are also people that we are routinely contacting. Two of the best resources that we have are our community resource officer, which currently is, Kellen Soulsby, and then our community service officer, which is a non-sworn position, Jason Croft, is going out and making contact. They leave the police department when they check in the morning, and they're immediately going out into, primarily, the first thing that they do is going out into our camping areas, whether it be Harbor Street or be in this downtown area here around Grand Circle. So they are very active, and I really appreciated that. And their work is also appreciated by our police officers, our patrol officers that are out there. And what I've been experiencing and seeing regularly is that our day shift officers, are primarily the ones naturally that I see and monitors a little bit more, just because I'm not here at night. But from the feedback that I've been getting is that even the night patrol officers are doing the same thing and are going out there and assisting in that part of the mission, which it's a burden on the patrol officers' workload. They're busy with the calls. I've covered some of the reports. It gives you a kind of a snapshot as far as the volume of calls that our department receives and responds to, and the traffic work and enforcement that officers are engaged in out there as well. I think that I will also tell you that, and some of you have been more intimately involved with the homeless council and some of the different missions, particularly relating to the Devereaux Center and the challenges that they've had. I think time will see just what that organization kind of morphs into, and whether or not we're going to still see the level of services available. Some of those things that the community resource officer in particular, he's going out there and contacting these people, and I think sometimes people think that that's, that he's out there, as the enforcer, and that's really not what he does. He's there checking in with these people. I would say more than 90% of the time, he knows them by first name through numerous contacts, and is there saying, what can I do for you? Whether it's getting somebody that's a homeless veteran in contact with the VA and resources there. And, and that in and of itself, you may not even know if that person is a veteran or not. But over the contacts, he's able to really establish a rapport with these people. And just may not be, as some of you have been in some of these council members where we've talked about this before, it might not be that first contact. It might be the 15th or 20th contact. It's just whatever that day is where, with what we're hoping to make contact with that person when they are ready to receive those services. And so that's what they're out there doing. I'm proud of the work that they're doing. Proud to report to you to let you know that they're doing an awesome job at a very important service. So I'm going to turn it over to you. No questions that you have.
So, for example, last night I was driving home, got in town pretty late, and it was like around 11 o'clock, and I noticed on Virginia there was a person who was sleeping up by the bank there by the mall. And I look, I'm like, it's like 37 degrees outside. And I thought to myself, one is, what's the scenario there? Is it a good assumption to make, or a reasonable assumption to make, that probably somebody from your team has probably already reached out to that person?
Very reasonable assumption that we've already made. Now, whether it happened that night or if it happened earlier in the day or the previous week, it's somebody that we most likely have made contact with, and most likely it's been the community resource officer that's already made contact. When our patrol officers see that person at night, or or it's reported that a situation is going on like that or occurring, that patrol officer is also aware of the benefits, talks to them, asks them, you know, have you talked to our community resource officer? Are you familiar with them? Are you familiar with the services in the area? If there's any warming shelters that are, you know, basically engaged at that time, on freeze warning or any of those services that are available, they're aware of those, and can offer that, to them as well, or make sure that they are aware.
It's like in this scenario, I could see just from somebody was driving and I was looking and I was like, I think they only had, like, there wasn't a tent or anything, it was just a blanket. So I'm like thinking, this person could die tonight. I mean, it was 37 degrees. Like, I felt a responsibility of, if your officer, like, when you see something like that on the nights that are freezing, I mean, I know that's not public property there, that's just the bank, but do you get calls like that? Like, people will call you and say, hey, there's a person sleeping outside, and
Yes, we do. We do get calls like that, and I would encourage anyone that sees a situation like that, where they're concerned for the safety of somebody, you know, from exposure, or whatever the situation is that they just call. They can call the business line, talk to the dispatcher, say, this is what I saw, you know, at this location, this time. I'm concerned because of the temperature, the lack of, you know, sleeping bag or shelter or anything like that. And then that triggers us to get out there as well, because that's, again, dealing with the number of officers we have on, it's limited. And we got a lot of area that we cover and a lot of the calls that we're covering. So, and just like in this particular scenario, where we're talking about, you know, the homeless population and their struggles dealing with the environment, you know, we can't do that without the public's input and their eyes out there monitoring those things. We don't have enough cameras in the city to be able to see even some of the things that we deal with in our parks, with our public bathrooms that are regularly, you know, being really vandalized, for lack, we'll just keep it at that, but and dealing with the stuff that they have to clean up and repair regularly. You know, we struggle to create a big enough presence as much as we can, through the limited resources. But anytime that somebody sees something like that, no matter what,
just call it in.
just call it in.
Do we have a warming shelter in the community right now?
The Salvation Army.
It's the Salvation Army, okay.
That's right.
It's the only one that we have now.
Yeah.
Do you get those updates when
We
they
do
are
get those
open?
updates when they're pushed out. They come in, and one of the things, again, with our community resource officer, that person is in contact with that agency just because of the mission itself, or his mission in dealing with the population, offering those resources. He needs to be aware of that, so he has that information to provide that, as well as when that comes in to either my desk or the captain's desk, we push that out to patrol as well.
Do our public safety officers have mental health crisis training?
Yes, that's a very good question, and we are we've been very fortunate that we have a very active MRT, the mobile response team, that we work with as well, and the organizations that offer that CIT training, to where they can go, the officers, it's generally about once a year, and any of our new officers, because they do get training at the academy, but this is a very intense, I think it's about a week long, if I remember correctly, that they go and attend that training. So, and we try to make sure that all of our officers have that training.
There's another piece too that you might not know about how Chief Mitz runs the department, which is that when people take training, they take the attitude of train the trainer. So they come back and share, which is awesome.
It's really important.
I've
How
several questions.
often do you call the crisis unit? I'm just curious.
Daily and probably multiple times a day. You know, there's days where I could say easily between 5 and 10 times a day that team is, and I don't know how many different advocates that they have working there, that they respond out to the end of the field, but they have vehicles and they have teams and people that are going out to meet with that, and they several times that's independent even of the work that we're doing and the contacts that we're having. So they're out there doing that, making those contacts a lot of times without law enforcement. But they certainly respond to our calls for assistance. never been turned down by that team.
That's awesome.
They've just, they're a huge support
That's awesome.
for the community.
Counselor Jones has a couple comments,
I have
questions.
I have 3 questions. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the idea of busing in homeless, other municipalities busing their homeless to here.
It does happen because in one aspect, I can't even say that we are not somewhat, I guess, guilty for lack of a better term, because you have people that you're contacting out there and the CRO will go out, they contact with somebody and they're like, man, today's the day, I need to get to wherever I need to go. So we actually will drive that person to the bus stop. And that bus depot usually, I think the main one is in Florence. And so if there are other arrangements that we can make here in the city, and it's not just about displacing a problem. If that's where the person has their only relative, their only
Right,
family,
I
we're
think
gonna
that
send
might
them
be
there.
part of the sort of,
Yeah.
it's not a cloud of just busing people.
But then
It's-
you also
have a
have other
location.
municipalities I know of that, they have their bus stops, that are traveling along the coast and whether or not I can't speak for the exact scenario that goes down every
Yeah.
time, but I think it's, you can definitely imagine the scenario where they're like, okay, how about we just put you on the bus and
Yeah,
send you up the coast?
yeah,
The times that we send people up to, or take people to Florence, I don't know what, we try to make sure that they are actually on the bus and they're actually going to the location they're going to.
Well, and I think there's a partial answer in here to me when you say that our community resource officer knows their first name.
Yes.
That tells me something about seeing the same people. So, okay, so thank you. The next one is, are you noticing any type of seasonality with homeless problems?
I think that.
Or
we've been doing-
homeless problems that affect the police have to intervene?
Right. And I could go back and look at that data and break it down. some
Just a
numbers, but I would
hunch.
tell you that from my experience, and it's been mentioned, and we've heard public comment about that, particularly in the harbor area, is that during the summer, the better
Yeah.
weather months,
Which
you
is
see
not a
lot
surprise.
more use of that area, as
Yeah.
well as, out here around Ground Circle, right? And currently right now, I've noticed just a few more RVs, vehicles, people using that, and that space out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Our people have to go out there and let people know that that's not a camping space, except for during these hours, and particularly the circle itself is not. I think it is a reasonable assumption to say that there is a noticeable increase during those months.
Yeah,
Where we see that. But I think it's also important to, each one of those people that are utilizing that space, I can recall a couple of different phone calls and or emails, sometimes are referred to me, maybe through the city administrator or someone else, where it's somebody just passing through. I mean, they're, instead of staying in the KOA campground, they're staying in a free camping place right there. And they're just there, but they're also there, but they provide a presence that's noticed, as far as another number, I guess, basically, so.
Yeah.
It is being used for other things other than what we would traditionally describe, like tonight, as the homeless.
yes, yeah. So the last question is, and this is, it's about our Property Watch program. And so I've noticed walking around town, people tucked into little bits of the private property, and many times those properties do not have our North Bend Property Watch displayed. And I know that for the place that I work, they joined the Coos Bay Property Watch, and we posted and we have a loading dock, and we posted a copy of that icon that we put in the front along all the windows, and had a dramatically reduced presence of people kind of hanging around waiting. And, you know, because it's in an alley. And so I was curious about the level of participation that we have. And I was also curious, I don't know the answer to this, but is it appropriate for me to go to a property owner and say, hey, you know, you could put a sign up, you could join this thing and put a sign up? Because I did remember from the neighborhood watch meeting that I went to, lots of the property owners who were there were like, it's a no-brainer, they should protect our property. And I said, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but in the US, private property rights have a line, and we do not have to invite the police or the government onto our property automatically. That's why we need an agreement with you. And so, you know, there's that piece, so.
Counselor Jones, I tell people all the time that you have to, it's not a,
It's an opt-in.
Yeah.
It's an opt-in, you don't get it automatically,
I don't know if
yeah.
you disagree with that, but I tell people
No,
all the time,
I-
like, you want to get on
I would
that.
totally agree with that.
Yeah, this is America. We don't have to quarter soldiers if we don't want to. So we have to work with the police if we
And I
want
know-
that
I mean,
protection.
We do have several business owners and properties, and this is a commercial issue.
Yeah.
As far as the properties, but and I know from having several conversations with multiple property owners at different times, is that they're like, hey, I'm gonna tell somebody, I'm gonna tell this property or this business about that, so I would encourage that.
So I can
Yeah.
do that with
Yeah.
Plum. Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
So I know you said you didn't bring any stats, and I know what the fluctuations in the seasons, but the Harbor Street, like, do you have any idea, like, how many people are there per night average?
I don't, but I can get you a better feel for that, rather than just picking a number right now. But I feel like, I think it's pretty safe to say that there's at least 10 different, a minimum of 10 different campers staying there at any night, or people using that space down there.
What's
Now,
the max,
sometimes
do you
those are a
think, like the
vehicle with
summer
3
max?
people in them. It's probably considerably more than that.
And when you say, because I drive through there just so that I can make informed conversations that I have with people. So I've been seeing a lot less than 10 in these
But it's cold.
colder
I think you
days.
might be talking
Because when
about
you say
summer.
campers, do you mean like cars and trailers, like 10, not like tents?
You'll have some RVs, you'll have some vehicles, and then you'll have people in tents.
Yeah.
And you'll have people that don't have tents, it just, it's a wide mix.
Yeah.
That way, but, usually there's a few RVs, there's multiple vehicles, and then there'll be people that are utilizing a tent. Sometimes they're not in the right spot for that, and where we're contacting them, but that's pretty typical. And I will say that the other thing that is, and I think just because of my time here, and coming in right at the time where this ordinance, we're working on that, and then enacted it, from what I can tell you is there is a noticeable difference about the other areas that we're experiencing a lot of issues with camping and RVs and those types of vehicles from, the 2021, late 2021 to where we are now. I mean, there is a noticeable decrease in
Yeah.
those issues in the other areas of the city, which, I've had those conversations with the public as well in some of these areas that had those problems before, and they're like, man,
No.
are so happy
Yeah.
that that's not happening. But again,
Let's
you're
take,
gonna have it.
yeah, about maybe 2 more questions on the subject and we can move on. Counselor Jones, do you have another one more?
I do. I was just curious about characterizing interactions with homeless and criminality. In particular, like when we saw the video from our one business owner with the people who broke in and took a mattress with these huge pipe cutters, I just thought to myself, I just didn't see a homeless person carrying around the pipe cutters and being able to deal with the mattress. And I didn't want to, make that comment, but I feel like we throw a lot of homeless or criminals, and I know there's some overlap, but I'm curious about what the overlap is for this area, if you can speak to that.
Well, I do not believe in criminalizing homelessness.
No, I mean the criminal behavior couple, like the
You're gonna-
overlap of
we
a
do
homeless
have-
person committing crimes.
Right, we have that, and that is a regular experience, I mean,
The
we-
vandalizing the bathrooms perhaps.
Yep, the vandalism, and a lot of times, and that in and of itself is a problem, because, you
Yeah.
know, it's a bathroom. and
Yeah.
The doors are shut, and we don't have cameras, and that's not legal.
Yeah.
Inside the bathroom, so you can't really say, but we also know who is using those bathrooms regularly, particularly at night, because the officers are contacting them. And we find them, breaking the rules or breaking the ordinance, and we have contacts. And we have people, even today, just this afternoon, we had an individual that just like, I don't care. I don't care, and I think this is fun, and I'm just gonna continue to do this, and I'll see you here tomorrow, or later tonight, or whenever, he got done. And that's gonna be something, we're gonna see, maybe a trend like
Yeah.
that that's happening as we
Yeah.
experience the problems with our jail, and
Yeah,
their
yeah.
ability to house, and
Yeah.
book, and so those are things, again.
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's
get shifting.
kind of an outlier situation right now.
No,
I
But
wouldn't say it's are you talking about the jail or
The person that was
person.
like,
I would say that we routinely deal with a handful of people like that ongoing throughout the year, and.
20% of the people take up 80% of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's-
I wouldn't say, I'm not gonna give that number as far as the homeless population, that 20% of them are this criminal problem that we're
Yeah,
dealing with all
yeah.
the time, because that's not the case. But, there is a considerable part of that community that takes a large percentage of our time, just for the fact that we have to be there to tell them, hey, it's supposed to be 7 o'clock and now it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And, you need to move along. A lot of times those are, again, a certain group of regular offenders that we're dealing with, but again, that it represents something, it does.
yeah.
Well, I think
Thank
the
you.
reason why it's working, our ordinance, has been working is because of you and your staff and the resource officers. And I mentioned it the other day in the State of the City's address, that people around the state have known that we've been able to have a better handle on it than some other cities. And I always tell them it's because of what you guys are doing. So the counselors know that the League of Oregon Cities, one of their adopted legislative priorities is to ask the governor to really take another look at 3115 and to see if, especially like on the clarity of objectively reasonable. And so we'll see if that gets anywhere in the legislation. But in the meantime, I think you guys are doing the best that you can with the set of circumstances that we have been given.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we're already looking at March next, month, but as we get into those warmer seasons, maybe we can revisit, like, do we need to have as many sites as we once originally thought? We were all just trying to figure this out a couple years ago when we had to set the, when we had to adopt the ordinance, when that deadline came. Maybe we can revisit that with you and say, maybe we don't need to do the waterfront this year. I don't know. We can kind of put that on, what's that?
We can look at it.
Put that on the agenda, really, to kind of like reevaluate that.
We have a camera, in that area down there that we've been able to go back to different incidents in that waterfront area and look to see. So, I mean, we can pull up basically at any time and see the number of people that are down there. So, I mean, that information is readily available.
I think these might be the same cameras. I feel like the city administrator has a place on our site where the Ziply cameras, isn't that what he's talking about? So I feel like
You can
any
look at
one
it
of
anytime,
us
yeah.
can go to our website and look up the cameras and see what's happening on those places.
Anything else for the chief?
And for the benefit, the police also have additional cameras that are law enforcement cameras.
Oh, okay.
That are not linked.
Of course, makes sense.
Okay, all right, so
Thank
let's
you.
definitely like circle back and before we get into the summer months and reevaluate, what we need to do with the current sites that we have available. Okay? All right, we're gonna take a 3-minute break, 3.5-minute break. So I'm gonna adjourn or call a
adjourn.
recess. I'm not gonna adjourn. I'm gonna have a 3.5-minute recess.
You might not get a quorum to open
Yeah.
back up. Now you can officially. look
Okay,
back.
all right, we're back from our recess, and now we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is our wastewater treatment plant fee updates. And
So
that-
I'm going to initially open this, then hand it over to our Public Works Director. The council's aware, or hopefully is aware, that you authorize staff to seek potentially a legislative fix to an interesting problem, and that is that we are in a city that has aging infrastructure, and we've gone to the taxpayers and asked for them to pay more to help cover that burden. And I will tell you that we have worked through legislative council and are making some headway. We're hoping at some point soon to see potentially what will be a draft piece of legislation. However, we, as you all know, I've been communicating with you all, we hit I won't call it a roadblock, we took a pretty substantial blow, and that is that during legislative comments during the most recent League of Cities meeting, it was brought up what our initiative was, and they believe at the League of Cities that there's a fundamental sort of hole to be hit on home rule. We as the city, meaning we, the administration, contend that home rule is not all encompassing. There's actually very specific end runs, and we've laid that out in communications to the league. For instance, home rule doesn't allow us to sort of say govern, say gun licensing in our community or some other things that are all preempted. With respect to our wastewater treatment plant, we are federally regulated through the state, and so the state then permits us, and we're amenable to them. We have a business operation or enterprise fund which runs the wastewater treatment plant, and those are fees for services. And so the League of Cities, the board took a vote, and the overwhelming majority was to go neutral on any potential legislation. I've covered Congress, I've covered state governments from the reporting side, but I've also been a city manager in local government now since 2008. And that is a very damning sort of blow to any potential legislation when your league will not help facilitate or back. They have articulated why. I've communicated that to you, and so you have that. The reality is we have a situation where we're not meeting ends meet. We are literally dwindling away what reserves we have. We made the council very aware of that starting July 1st. And in talking to staff, we're going to sort of ramp up the communication to the public and get a lot more engaged so that they understand what services are. The mayor had communicated with me, and I've confirmed it back with the league. So the league's position is your people, meaning your constituents, you have heard from them. They have said what they want, which is no increased wastewater fees. And so therefore you shall cut services to make ends meet and continue the services that you provide. And so the most recent document that I shared with you was again just trying to find unique or out of the box thought processes for how we can address the situation. because in about 4 years, that account will be insolvent and we will not have the resources to pay. Although there are some at the state level, I've been chatting, that says, well, you do have resources. You can sell your assets, you can sell buildings, and you have them. And I thought that was a pretty interesting take. Again, remind folks who are listening, because the question will come up, well, why don't you go get grants? We've been denied for grants for our wastewater treatment plant because we're not within the 75th percentile of average fees nationwide. And until
Meaning our fees are too low. They don't meet the threshold
we are
of
way
skin in
too
the
low.
game. Yeah.
We are extremely low. And so with that said, I wanted Ralph to sort of give you an update so folks know where our wastewater treatment plant and what money we are spending, because we are continuing to try to maintain the system, but it's no different than our roads or other infrastructure. There's not ample resources to maintain those. So with that, Mr. Ralph.
Well, part of the updates, the good news, we pretty much exceeded our target for maintaining our system in 2024. Part of that had to do with receiving an EPA grant, direct federal appropriation, which in this fiscal year we got $1.3 million, 1.34. We'll have spent about $1 million. And I will tell you there's a math error on here. I left out a minor amount of $865,000 when I was giving you your totals, so kind of wouldn't want to sign a tax statement on there, but I saw that and I looked at it and I thought, where'd that go? So
You said you left it out, or, because I see
I
the
left it, it is mentioned in there,
Yeah.
but in the totals.
in the totals, okay.
In the totals, it looks like, so our income this year will be approximately $2.23 million. And that's a combination of $2,050,000 roughly in sewer fees. And then we're earning interest on our reserves. So there's another $150,000 plus about $25,000 in miscellaneous fees. We treat, Little Stinker, for example, provides dumps at our treatment plant. They pay us for it. We sell some scrap, we sell miscellaneous materials. But 223 is our annual income. This year, although we exceeded our goals, and part of that was $865,000 when I say the minor error, and the numbers that were given to you, I did include EPA's reimbursement, but I didn't include the pump station 4 in the totals. We are going to expend before the year's over approximately $4.9 million, of which we'll receive $1 million back from EPA. So $3.9 million in expense, $2.2 million in income.
Upside down.
Upside down. We won't be replacing pump stations every year.
And so that.
So that 900,000 isn't an annual expense. We happen to do that because of our EPA grant getting 50% or 80% of that money back.
And so the deficit's gonna come from the reserves this year.
Deficit's gonna come from reserves this year. And our operating costs are about $1.9 million without doing any capital outlay. And we have 2.2, so that's 300,000. In order to facilitate that, our combination sewer cleaner, if we purchase one next year, is 600,000 by itself. We can't sustain replacement costs. We can operate the plant with our income where we're at. We cannot replace and maintain the plant with the income where we're at. And I just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, the numbers are pretty much correct, other than the little $865,000 error. But the minute I looked at this, I said, wait a second, this isn't looking right. But I'm the one that wrote it to David. He put it in here, so it's all my fault, trust me.
Is DEQ who governs the law?
Well, EPA, we're regulated, we're permitted through the state of Oregon under EPA regulations. So the federal government puts the regulations down and authorizes DEQ
Okay.
to enforce and regulate that.
And what other cities or municipalities are facing the same roadblock with us? I think someone said Bandon
Cascade
and Gold
Locks.
Beach, Cascade Locks.
Bandon,
Reedsport,
Reedsport.
us.
And there's one, a fifth one, which I've yet to take the time to go back because simply, as I told one other city that was asking me, we went to draft legislation before I had a meeting with our city managers. They all knew that we've been researching this topic for about 2 years because this is how
You
we
can tell.
identify
Yeah.
the other cities.
Yeah.
I just cannot recall, but it is one in the Portland area. And for some reason, I think it starts with like an S, but I just don't recall what number 5 is. I did have a call this past week with Cascade Locks and Bandon.
So I could have this list wrong, I just want to get it right. Bandon, Gold Beach, North Bend, Cascade Locks, Reedsport, +1 in the Portland area.
no Gold Beach.
No Gold Beach, really? Okay. I
Bandon,
thought someone
Reedsport,
said Gold
Cascade
Beach
Locks,
was in there.
yeah.
I thought I read that in the lock letter you
Are
forwarded.
you ready for more questions or still presenting?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my request is, because I have, what I think I am understanding about the community is, there was a vote to increase the wastewater fee, and it didn't pass. And to this day, when I talk to people, I don't think people quite understood what that meant when they were voting no, that we're upside down and we're gonna be insolvent. So I'm wondering if we could do it, now, of course, I always know, I'm like, we're gonna do a town hall, and there's gonna be a line of people out the door, and then we'll still ask Mr. Bridgens how many people came to his finance talk at the town, but I feel like it's in the marketing. Could we have something at the community center with a meeting that is, and the title is so important, it needs to be something like, when will you have poop in your water? Like, I think that would get people to a meeting. How many days until the wastewater treatment plant is upside down? Because I look around this room, and the only people that I see in this room tonight are the people who are elected, the department heads, and the staff. So the only way that I can get people, I'm sorry, Cassie, and the counselor, one of the counselor's wives. I've said before, even my mom has stopped coming to the meetings, if you haven't noticed. Okay, so that was like right in the heart. So, but if, and I say that, like, you think I'm being trite.
No,
I'm
no,
really
no,
serious.
no.
When will you have poop in your water? Would that get people to come to a town hall? Because I don't want, I would love to sell it if we could, because we are not getting enough money from the people to maintain it, so that we can't do our job, which is to provide a system that works. Then,
Well, and there's upsides to how it's formed, like it's an enterprise fund, there's no funny business with that money, like
so
it
how
funnels
do,
directly and is
since
only used
people aren't
for
going
that.
to come to a work session to hear about this is on the agenda, it's on the website, we post our information out when our meetings are, they're not gonna come to a meeting, but if they would come to a meeting about when am I gonna have poop in my water? And I mean, I'm being gross, but maybe it's something, less dramatic.
You might be able to scale it back a little.
I could scale it back to
What,
scope.
are you kidding? She
But
just
I'll tell you
pooped.
what, when,
So the only reason
much
you're
further
getting
back?
this response from staff is when you
That's
say,
us.
when am I gonna have poop in my water? I now have the water board all over us.
Right.
And so our water and wastewater don't mix, they don't intercommingle. And so I know where you're going, but at the same time, also inflicting fear into folks.
Yeah.
So we gotta figure out something, and we're glad, I mean, Ralph has what's remaining, he could bring in a consultant. We've tried to send things to communicate in everyone's utility bills
And we also
and
have
everything else.
the,
And at the end of the day,
electoral
405 people voted against the fees, 504 more than did even in the mayor's race. It's almost like they flipped it over. I don't know what the answer is. I do know that we're updating our website with sort of a counter that shows that this is how long until we're going to be insolvent.
But see,
So
that,
we're-
those words
we're-
don't resonate with
We're
people.
attempting things to get people's attention.
Because we've used that language before, like how, and, you know, we can workshop this later of what it's called, and I don't mean to put scare tactics to people. What I'm trying to do is look for like attention getters. So when you say, how long will it take for the water, or for the, you know, wastewater treatment plant to be insolvent? I don't think people even can register like what that means.
No, they don't know what it means for the fund to be bankrupt. And so if the sewer line in front of their house collapses and you call and it's like, sorry, we can't fix it.
Yeah.
But we got a bake sale next week, and we're raising money, please send money. They'll get that. And so I agree, we can work on trying to find some way. Jeff and I were talking about this on some other topics. We've got to figure out how to change up messaging so that it actually gets to folks and they'll actually read it and understand it. You know, I had a list here and it's the reality. Folks say they don't know what's going on in this community, and I start taking notes. I'm like, well, you have these council meetings that we broadcast, so then you can go back and watch it online on YouTube. We post, you know, to 7 different Facebook pages. We post to Nextdoor. We post on our website. We send newspaper articles that copy and paste them. We get new TV reports. We have an automated email alert system, which has just shy of 1,000 people on it. We pay to get utility bill inserts. I do a city administrator's report that has every single thing. If you sneeze in the city, it's in it. And then folks say, well, how come my wife didn't know about it?
You didn't
And
talk to
I'm
this
sorry that I wasn't able to sit down and handwrite her a note and send something to her.
What's frustrating to me a little bit more, I totally get this, but what's frustrating to me is that either LOC or DEQ, like this is a fiscal catastrophic failure that we can absolutely foresee. And there's a bunch of other communities that are doing it, and it, having that same catastrophic failure in the new, I am watching my train wreck. You know what I mean? I'm watching it wreck. And that is what frustrates me. Like we have to, at this moment, we have to wait for actual catastrophic failures before we start getting fined. And then before the state comes in to take it over and we get our fees increased. I mean, I don't want fees increased either.
Counselors,
You go.
Counselor Slater and then back to
Yeah.
Counselor Garwood.
Yeah, I obviously the thing is, you know, how do we communicate? How do we get it out? And I believe the information and the stuff that you put together and the postings, and that is one element of that. But there's another aspect which I think we can add to that, which is you're perceived in the communication piece as dealers and salesmen, you know, which are sort of acting in their own self-interest. That's the way. And what the more important an issue is, you turn to your friends and neighbors to find out what the information, you know, what can we do? What do you think about it? And as we look at it that way, I think that becomes our responsibility to be fully informed on that, be able to talk it in real people language, and for us to go out to all the different groups and things that you're part of, and keep that information flow and recruit others that, you know, within our system that could do the same thing. But when you, that so-and-so knows, is telling them about this, and this is where it all goes to pieces at that point, I think that's the key that takes that great factual information and brings it home. And if we do that, we can add that element to the communication part and actually start penetrating, I believe, those that sit on their ass and don't really look at anything other than the first page of their phone.
Yeah.
Okay. One issue on that, I mean, if I told Matt something, he tells it to Jenny, he tells it to her.
Telephone.
It's not gonna be, the answer at the end of the road is gonna be nowhere near what started with me to Matt.
Yeah, well, you've got the information in your head,
I
and you take
understand
it
that, but
from them.
it's still gonna be
Messy.
what he remembers, because we won't have the sheet, what Jenny remembers, I mean, word of mouth is not going to get
No,
the factual information out.
Well,
We gotta try.
And,
I mean,
in LOC's defense, I mean, they represent 241 cities. There's 5 cities that have this problem.
Yeah.
So I don't like that they stay neutral with it, but I can understand.
Yeah, well, and I mean, maybe, there should be some momentum in this, just trying to think of what would be a funny analogy
Well,
to explain.
I think that it comes, I think that my ask is to do whatever we can to continue to get the information out, whether it's what we do individually, the things that we're already doing on social media. But what I see as like the most effective way to get a lot of people talking about it is to have a really big attention grabber type of headline. Come to the town hall in April and learn about the looming catastrophic failure that could happen. Like it has to be
Wastewater
something like that.
Armageddon.
Because if you say learn why your or wastewater is going to be insoluble or whatever that word is, it's not, that doesn't register with people.
The reality is, we're fighting two things. One of them's our charter amendment with the supermajority, if you want to call it that, the majority of the electoral vote, which makes it, I personally would have put a bunch of money into a PAC and had people go out, but I don't know how to get a 72 to 80% in favor vote, which is what really is required, not
It's
51%.
impossible. It's impractical.
Is because you have people that can't afford any kind of increase. You have a percentage, I don't want to quote a percentage, but I received more contacts when I couldn't speak after we filed the ballot measure. And I probably talked to 10 people who just said they can't afford it. Social Security, they even told me what their I talked to one lady whose monthly Social Security was under $1,000. I mean, you can't afford anything, single or not, hardly. You've got to be very penny pinch. So you have a segment that can't afford it, that you're not going to get a yes vote because they can't, they may approve of it, say we need to do it. In fact, most of the people were supportive, but they just can't afford it. We have another big percentage, and that was my fault. I pushed you to do a 5% increase to fund the future because I did not want to have to come back to the public again, and I talked you into it. That wasn't your idea, that was my idea. I had a big percentage, probably 15 to 20 people call me and say this 5% forever. I just don't approve of that. I do understand it. And a big part of it was public did not engage until after the ballot measure was filed. We had 6 public hearings about it. I think the most we had show up, that wasn't staff, family, whatever, was 4 or 5.
What was the number of voters that even showed for this election out of North Bend?
How many actually, what was our voter turnout?
Yeah,
I don't recall right off.
but I mean, were we close?
But I no, we were nowhere close.
Nowhere close to even 50%.
Yes, yeah. Very salient point, because this will circle back, because this also happened at the school board meetings. And so, when you ask a question on there, the fact that I don't know right away doesn't mean that we don't have the answer or don't know. We actually do know what the voter turnout and how many, it's a report online. We just don't know,
No, but I mean, just get in
looking up.
the ballpark. We know we're going in at 50%, right?
We might have been at 50, but we weren't hitting.
We weren't at
the
50%. I don't even think we hit 30.
You know,
In favor or no? We had
No, our turnout.
turnout. So
Our turnout.
I mean, even if everybody would have voted yes, we were still
Underwater.
We were still way a mile from it, you know? I mean, the trick is to get the number of voters to actually come out and get the number of votes.
Yeah, you're fighting two things. You gotta have about 80% turnout to even have a prayer, which we didn't have. That's part of the reason we picked the November election. And the other thing is, because of that majority, and we still are researching to see if there's, the other thing to change is change that to a simple majority of the people voting. I think we have a chance there on a vote.
Well, I think-
Personally, I don't think we have a chance taking it to a vote again with the supermajority rules, just because you have to have approximately, over 50% turnout
So
and 100% of those voting yes, so.
If-
So we had 7,518 registered voters, our turnout was 68.97. So we didn't even get near the 75%, and all 75% would have had been in the favor
yeah.
to pass it. That's what's so unique about this situation.
I mean, the way I'm looking at it, you got three options. You could put all your efforts into a ballot measure again. You can sit and wait for legislation, or you could sell.
Yep. Or you sell off your assets, or you have a volunteer police and fire department.
But even if you sell off your assets, that funds it for like a couple of years down the
Yeah.
road, and you still crash.
So is that, that was a question that you weren't even sure is possible. Are we able to sell a municipality like that?
So, I don't know if our city recorder, our city, our city attorney has looked into this. I will tell you that in discussions, it was interesting. So, I learned recently with the whole Bay Area that the hospital is an asset and it was paid for with tax funds, and that the district is keeping that, and that does not transfer, and it's for that reason. So with that said, here's your city attorney.
Okay, so, Mr. Wolf, we have a situation here.
Yeah, I think that the short answer is ultimately yes, that it could be sold, but there are gonna be a slew of challenges with selling that, with trying to sell this thing off. I mean, there's gonna be all sorts of easement issues. There's a number of issues. I mean, I haven't researched this in depth, other than amongst my team here, we had a talk about this, and there are some companies out there in the business of buying municipal utilities.
I just wish there was like a DEQ executive order that added a category of catastrophic failure called fiscal catastrophic failure. Because if we know we're 4 years out, it will be a lot cheaper for a takeover now and less problems with a takeover now than to wait and to bother to find and to bother to, you know what I mean? Like, I just wish there were a category, because we can see it happening.
Yeah, and so our rates would have gone from roughly how much to what?
Well, $37 to 64 after 3 years, and then 5%
Yeah.
a year, but that was for,
That was for us doing the work. This is not that. I mean, we'll see double or
Well,
triple.
exactly. And that's the point, so.
Yeah.
What is?
15 to
private industry
20%
rates?
profit margin on a, depending on the risk, riskier a situation is, I don't know that it's high
Well,
risk.
I mean, if you sold this thing or leased out the operation to somebody else,
Yes.
you're gonna see the sewer rates go from $30-some to
To
90
80 or
dollars.
100. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you know, council, and Ralph gave me some feedback. So I sent you a document where it's like came up with some ideas, and one of those ideas was, that wastewater treatment plant facility is actually on the airport. So tell the FAA it's yours, and you can take over the whole thing, and they're their own
Yes.
taxing district. And then the airport can also start billing for sewage. And I can only imagine, within the next couple hours, if I hear from Roger, And he's gonna tell me
We'll give him
what
a
he
deal.
thinks. But, you know, those are options and we honestly need to explore them. Another option is, you know, with some of these fee issues and things where we're not making ends meet, we could potentially send to the voters, you know, 10, 20, 30 ballot initiatives in May and then hit again in November. Because you only have 2 opportunities per your charter when you can raise those with voter approval. And that's in a November and a May ballot initiative. So, food for thought to you all.
I think exploring I mean, I don't know if you're joking about like the airport, but maybe that's something.
Do airport or Coos Bay, I mean, we're already connected.
Yeah.
Neither one.
Can you ever have a ballot measure that like that ballot measure was a yes or no? Can you ever do a ballot measure that's like, raise the fees to this now, or like, you know, like a takeover?
It's not
you
multiple
know?
choice, so
It's always a yes or no.
Yeah, so
It
you have
has
to
to
like,
be yes
you
or
could
no.
put 5 different questions on there, you know. It's almost like when Coos Bay wanted to find out what the voters thought on 3 different library, and what did they get? They got responses on yes, no. Well, which one did you prefer, you know, and they themselves had problems interpreting.
So our ballot measures can only be yes or no.
Yes.
Be easier to say, would you like 64 or $105?
Yes, yes. And then you find out how many nulls there are.
Well, and it's really not Armageddon. 4 years at our current rate, or even a reduced rate of spending, that's based on our 5-year capital improvement plan. And these are all needed improvements. As I noted, 1.85 million of your 2.2 million is just running the plant.
operations,
That's
it's just
That's
running.
not replacing
Fixing.
or fixing anything that needs, and the age of our system is old. I mean, we gained a half a year. We were at 59, now we're at 58 and a half. So we did good last year, but we spent almost 200% of our
Regular revenue. Yeah.
annual income. So and we don't need to be there, that whatever council is seated 2 years from now, if we don't do anything, we'll have to start taking in some thoughts about cuts. And then the cuts are gonna be risk. Risk is gonna end up being,
How can
we
you
have
cut-
failures.
How can you cut the sewage? Like, how does
We
that
could,
even
there's
look?
things we could remove from what we do today. We
Right.
could, for example, we go out, I'm not saying this is a big expense, we will TV your sewer lateral for free for you.
Yeah, I used that when we found the rat
You cut that out of there.
smiling at us. jumping out of
Currently,
our
Coos
toilet.
Bay, for example, is not responsible from the laterals from the main line, from the service, from the main line to your home. We maintain, and we probably spend $50,000 a year maintaining that portion of lateral. You can cut that. I'm not saying we can't cut it all.
We should probably.
It's a
do
Band-Aid on a, something that should be a trauma case, you know what I mean, is what it really is. Yes, that'll extend, we can extend a couple years. And again, when we're talking catastrophic failure, it's not the whole system's gonna go at once, we're just gonna start having, and I anticipate without an increase, somewhere between 6 and 9 years, we're gonna start seeing these things happen, and then it's when DEQ is gonna descend on us and say you're violating your permit. They'll put us under an order. That order will supersede, or they say you shall. They'll start fining us. You shall do this. We shall do that. We'll have to raise our fees, or we sell it.
We
or
can't raise
get
our
other
fees though.
relief,
I don't,
but that's.
I
I
don't think
mean,
we
I
can
can
raise
tell
our
you
fees though,
communities
even
have
if
been
they
through
fine
that.
us. Even if they fine us, we can't raise our fees, because it's in our charter that we can't raise our fees. Like, that to me, so
Well-
to me, that's the new category of catastrophic
The
failure.
authority and powers kind of went through this, I'm gonna say, 10 years ago, maybe a little further. They put an EPA package together, grant, rural development, they voted it down. I think they voted down 3 years in a row. And then EPA and DEQ stepped in, said, you gotta do this. They helped finance it. It raised their rates over double,
That's
and they
what
did
I'm
it,
saying.
but that's the reality. If we start putting poop in the bay, we're not gonna say in the water. The
Sorry.
reality is,
We filter
We're
it
not
out.
putting poop in the bag.
if we get to that point where we'll be federally regulated and the citizens have no choice in the matter then.
So that, again, back to like the ask of, and I know I'm being really optimistic.
Home rule
about-
goes away, so to speak.
What goes away?
Home rule.
Home. I know I'm being really optimistic that thinking if we just have the right catchphrase, people will pay attention. But I only see these pass forwards the same as you. It's either we're gonna have to sell it, or we get to the point where the feds take over. And so before we get to that, so that we don't have people freaking out saying, how come nobody was talking about this? I didn't hear anything. I want to try to figure out if it's a town hall or something at the library that's really has a very specific kind of advertising campaign about like, when will the feds take over our water treatment plant? Maybe instead of talking about sewer
If, but
Farrahville
when, yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like if we did something like that, either in the next 6 months.
And there's other options too. You have that option. You also have an option to remove it from a vote to remove it, that segment, our wastewater utility from the charter amendment. That could be you're trying to think of all aspects.
But the voters aren't gonna,
I'm not saying they would vote
Approve that
for it,
either.
but that might be.
it's a charter change. We
I
have
mean,
to.
I appreciate where the mayor's coming from, and so, so first, the great reveal, best secret in town. There was food, there was entertainment, there was everything there. And how many people did you get for that?
About 45.
And the marketing was over the top, 45 people. So for Ralph, take some of your money, because I know you're over budget on one of your items, by the way. But find some money in your budget and hire someone to do some potential messaging for you. And let's start sending it every month out in the utility bills. Let's find something that,
A countdown.
but we're not putting poop in the water and we're not putting it in the bay, but let's work on some messaging that they understand. And once we've gained some of that, then let's look at some questions potentially for the November. Because here we are February, and you could make May, you could, but what's going to be the ask? A reduced set of fees, and then we're going to be right back here. The sentiment is, well, I'm not gonna harp on the fact that, we keep trying to do things to move this city forward, and it's like we're being whack-a-mole on trying to move the city forward. And so let's just put messaging, and that messaging can create a website where we can have the facts there. And then as you're talking to folks, because now that Councilman Slater's talked up, we'll assign you 1,485 people each, and we'll give you a card to go out and give it to them when you talk to them about it.
Yeah.
With a QR code back to the site.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just did some fast math, by the way,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
population divided by 7. We're not the only ones faced with this, but trying to communicate there was a reason I named all those, because there's absolutely no reason. It's a civic responsibility that you as a member of the public should be knowing what the heck's going on in your community. But that's out the door these
No,
days.
and the words, fees and aren't gonna, or water or sewer aren't gonna get people to meetings, but the things that are the real reality, like potential catastrophic failure or potential government takeover, I think could get people to a meeting.
Yeah.
So we'll figure out someone and we'll work through some messaging and,
Yeah, I think
Ralph
the
is,
messaging is excellent
he's
right now, because you're
excited about
not
this, and
asking
so-
for anything, you're providing information.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And you get further down the line, then it's okay, let's talk on
Yeah.
whatever, so that's a great focus.
All right.
Did you say Powers voted down the increase and then got a double, am I hearing that right?
There's a few others that have been through similar things and their
Sutherland,
stories.
Powers,
Yeah. So I'm gonna put a pin in that right now though, because it's 6:20 and we still have 8, which is next steps for North. We have we have 8, 9, and 10 on the work agenda. So I think those are good questions, Counselor Jones, and that is something that we can definitely get the information on, is how many cities have been through something similar and when they did finally get something to pass. So
Number 7.
number 7, North Bend, so we have 3 things, so we're gonna wanna kind of be careful of our time on these. North Bend Housing Authority pilot discussion, page 19 of your packet.
All right, so you all received communications from me. This goes back to when the Housing Authority purchased the Bangor School project. It was engaged at that time with the executive director at that time that we would need to work out a pilot. Unfortunately, that executive director moved in, a new one's come in. We have had on the last 4 years of our strategic plan, fiscal responsibility, and then most notably, it was actually Councilor Gaw who specifically, championed, let's hit this pilot, let's address it. For those not aware or listening online, all 103,000 of you, a pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, and so it's as if you're in a fee for services. And so the finance director and I met with the executive director of the Housing Authority and their deputy director, who's also their finance person. As you know, they're putting in 176 affordable housing units. They're doing that through local innovation and fast track, or LIFT, and permanent supportive housing PSH funds. And they're also getting about $2 million from Coos Health and Wellness, so that they'll have supportive services on site. The downside is that we started communicating last year saying, okay, your project's moved forward, it's in the permit process, we need to start having conversations about our pilot. For multiple health reasons and things, it got canceled, but we were finally able to meet with them. And Jeff is here, and as you know, or may not know for those new, Jeff has quite a bit of background with working with housing authorities. But here's the deal. They said that this is not a HUD-supported or traditional HUD project, and therefore they do not have money to pay the city anything for its services. However, maybe in phase 2, and they communicated that, well, maybe we work through getting some infrastructure or things that the city needs that could help offset the cost of those services. When I say services, those are the key general fund services, so police, fire, parks and rec, finance administration. And traditionally, a housing authority will usually have a pilot in place. So usually they have audited finances. At the end of the year, the gross revenue less the cost for utilities, 10% comes to the local government, and the 10% generally does not exceed what they traditionally would pay for property taxes. So with that said, there are some questions under the budgeting and impact section, page 19 of your agenda. And Jeff, you've got the floor with the council.
Pretty much said it, David, about the issue is that they don't have the ability to pay for that pilot right now. And, David is right, there's a formula that you usually use, and it's pretty standardized, I think, when it's 10% of the gross rents. But I guess the key issue for us is now, how do we work with them to have them be able to have the ability to pay a pilot, to pay for those services? You can imagine with a lot of units going in, there's a lot of people that live there. There's bound to be police calls and that sort of thing. So it's a big issue, and one that I don't think we were expecting.
I don't think we were expecting that. I felt like we were under. Does this plan that they have in phase one include 24/7 security? Is there a first responder element, or does it not include 24/7 security?
I'm not sure what their security plans are for their project.
They have informed us in presentations that they're supposed to have on-site management, but they're not going to be police, they're not going to be fire.
Well, we as a city cannot afford, just after listening to Ralph talk, to take on protection and all other city services to a facility with ultimately 160 units for nothing.
Is it, so no sewer money either? Is that what?
They pay sewer.
They would pay.
So they would
You
contribute their
have
fair
enough
share
money,
of sewer,
like
it's
police,
fire,
fire.
it's the safety. Okay.
What's our millage rate? $6.17?
Per thousand, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
This is gonna be a $10 million piece of property.
It's a $40 million project,
It's a large project.
and I think they paid roughly about $1 million for the property, give or take, and so yeah, so it's.
So like you're getting at the math. You take
Yeah, what's the gap?
You're taking the 40 million.
That is it.
Or do you take the 40 million
Yeah, take 40 million.
times the millage rate?
We could estimate what a property tax would be. I think the other
40 million.
way to look at it too would be if you were to
But
execute
you
a
would use the
pilot,
40
what are
million,
their
that's a
estimates for gross rent less utilities to come up with an amount and then compare those two. See what we're
Like-
talking about in terms of paying for those
Yeah.
services.
Do we have any teeth for how to negotiate, or is this just here's your bill that you're not gonna pay? We should know what those numbers are.
Yeah.
We should know those comparative
Like,
numbers,
just for
and we
rough
should know them.
numbers,
So-
if you do that,
Yeah.
you get about $200,000.
So generally, when a new development's put on, let's say that they come in and get a permit and say it's a $40 million development, because it measures 5 and 50, that amount is actually decreased, so you actually get upfront a discount, and then you take that amount and multiply it by, our tax rate, and that should give you about how much on the books it would be.
You'd be looking at about 150 grand a year.
The current quarterly that we're getting for this, do you recall what that amount is? It's a very old agreement that
About
needs to be updated.
$8,000.
At the like Hamilton Apartments or?
Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah. And so we, as we have looked at our agreements, we have to revise, we've already notified the Confederate tribe that, we have to revise theirs. We have reviewed this one, and Ralph thought it was the new proposed one that started marking it up, God bless him, because he's like, oh, how'd this actually get passed? Well, we have to update that, and then this is one where you got a large development, and so this would be the simple verbiage to the public, okay? You had this development coming, are you okay with paying for all of this, general services at there? Get them to a meeting, and while they're there, then talk to them about poop.
I
We
feel
should
like
put that as a
Counselor
ballot
Torres
measure.
had a
I'm sorry, we
question.
can't put this in.
I'm okay right now.
You're okay,
I just
okay.
like had a couple like, I'm new, but like how far in advance did we plan this out with them? And did they come to any type of like informal agreement? Or like, and then they backed out?
Yep.
Is that what?
No.
So the original was a traditional housing project. Okay, they actually went some of the traditional ways, and when those didn't fail, they went a different route, not a traditional HUD property route. HUD subsidizes their current. HUD will not be involved subsidizing this development. That's the difference. And again, it goes through training, expertise. We ask, how many of your board members go to training? We talked about in the meeting, did the previous executive director transfer this information to you? I will say that in the permitting phase is when we sent a reminder and got a interesting response because they've been at it for a couple years trying, and so we have been trying to meet with them for months, and unfortunately there's been illnesses on their staff side, and so I've alerted the council immediately, because this is one of your strategic goals, and it's been published, well published, consistently now for 4 years. So.
Well, they have to figure out how to pay some sort
Yeah,
of payment to the city.
agreed.
That's all there is to it.
Agreed.
Well, our goal is to find out what is the will of the council, because staff can't talk for that. They've offered, could you work something out on phase 2? Phase 2 is 71. And we heard the chief the other night saying, well, we need a new ladder truck. And it's like, I'm telling the chief, absolutely we need a new ladder truck. There's not money for a new ladder truck. And so here's, this is, multi-story phase, project. And so we need clear direction, which is why we have the questions in here, so that you can sort of guide staff. What is our direction? What are our marching orders? What should we be communicating in this respect? Because you have a fellow government agency, and that's what it is. It's a government agency who is conveyed to us officially they cannot afford to pay the city of North Bend for police, fire, and other general fund services.
They can afford to buy
$40 million property,
infrastructure or
yeah.
something else,
Yeah.
but they can't afford to pay us.
They were
Scale
looking
back.
at grants that they
Okay, so
potentially
there's no
could get.
guarantee that you get anything out of it. How did this thing get this far without a pilot payment somewhere involved in this whole thing?
There would never be a pilot until they actually got to the point that they could actually do permitting. You don't do a pilot unless you have a development. So as soon as they got to the point of development, now we had already engaged, again, Margaret Turner and I had conversations and communicated, because they had bought that within the first couple months of my arrival here. And she left, and Matt Vardatros clearly says, yes, there was a very limited amount of communication and there wasn't any training, and it wasn't in the folder. As we have chatted about city services, they go through the permitting process throughout the entire city. They had been making all of their quarterly payments to us on the existing pilot. So it's not as if they're not aware of a pilot. They've been making the payments on the pilot. It's when we communicated, okay, you're moving forward, you're now to the point that you're going to do demolition. That's when we reached out and said, we need to engage on starting to write the pilot. It'll take them about a year, so you don't actually provide services, and the pilot actually doesn't go into effect until there's folks in house. And generally, it takes a 1 year to do an audit to figure out how much they're making, take off the utilities, and then the check comes to you. And so this is not unusual. We actually engaged very early in on the process. What was news to us was, well, what do you mean HUD's not involved in this? How's the Housing Authority involved in a non-HUD project? And so they have teamed up, and again, we can invite the executive director to come in and address with the council, but they've teamed up with a nonprofit.
I think it would be good to look at their projections for,
You know.
for what
So
they're projecting
that's
on the operations for.
Part of the
project.
sticking point is that it's not, if it was kind of a HUD-backed project, that pilot payment in lieu of
They would have
taxes
subsidized
would have been
for those
subsidized.
services.
So have you been able to get any indication that if they were able to go back to the drawing board and, you know, because obviously housing is important to all of us. It's the number one thing that we talk about. We want to increase the housing. But we need to make sure that they have proper city services that we can, you know.
Yeah, they have to pay for city
we gotta
services somehow.
have
They
them
have to
for
pay
it.
their
So
fair share.
would there be, is there potential in their redesign, like maybe it's 4 units less?
I don't
there's
know.
some, you know, like, do they even have the mechanism to be able to find money in, like, okay, maybe it doesn't get to be X amount of units this time, it's a little bit less, but that way we can budget to be able to pay for the city services? I hate to say that because we want as many housing as possible.
Well, now's the time to dot the i's and cross the t's. We don't want to have a Devereaux situation where we compromise the equal protection of the people who are paying their bills and who are doing those things in service of people who are not able to do that. Like, we don't want that fight. So before they've broken ground, before demolition, it's, to me, if it were just up to me, it'd be like, it's a hard no. You got to figure it out. We're sorry, but it's a hard no.
I
And
appreciate.
we did engage prior to demolition.
Yes, I mean, they knew
We had the
this was
time that it
coming.
was permitted well before, and this was last year. I have to go back
Yeah.
and look at, but we engaged with them on this, and I can go back to the exact date.
Well, I mean, if they've got commitments for this project for $40 million, they can find another 150 grand somewhere.
Each year,
And, I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
phase one starts now, phase two might be 5 years from now.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
I'm not gonna put the city at risk for spending all this money to subsidize this housing project, which we needed, but I mean, they need to do their damn job and pay their way.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate knowing turnover and stuff like that, but, you know, I'm not a yeller anyway. Like, we have to pay our fair share of these services. I mean, this is one of the ways that you've got the middle class. You have the lowest getting the resources, the middle cut out, the top getting the tax cuts. I mean, this is what's happening.
Counselor Slater?
You know, I was gonna say, and every year as we go through the budget things, you've seen the tough parts, especially for public safety.
Yeah.
And the needs that are going on, so I see no way in hell that we give that away for free. And if in fact they're creating those sets, then there's gotta be, you either get taxed or you pay for a service. It doesn't make sense for the rest of the citizens in North Bend, and they need to maybe along the line of redesign what they're gonna do
Yeah,
so they can stay within their budget.
yes, yes.
I mean, if it's hard enough to raise the services, and now we're just fighting getting the initial payment?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, so
they
we
have to
reached out to
reconnoiter a
them
bit.
November 13, 2024, to officially say, okay, we need to set a meeting now.
Was this the first executive director before it switched?
The first, property was purchased and the project was started under Margaret Turner. And she left in early, if my recollection is, sometime about maybe mid-2021. And then Matt Botterchoss came over and picked up the project. And so they have been at multiple bites at the table, and again, the Housing Authority, has made several presentations to us. So this part is news, and that's why we asked, how many of your board members are going to board member training? Do they have the training? Because I've had that issue in other cities I've managed where the Housing Authority board members did not get the training that they're supposed to. And again, collectively, but they had been making quarterly payments, and they do, not just to us, but to others. So they're well versed in pilots. Somehow or another, this did not, come up in their pro forma, and they insist their budget and everything just cannot sustain paying city services.
As a counselor, I don't care what their budget says. I mean, we worry about our budget.
Yeah.
And if they don't have the education on their board, that's on them.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, we need to be compensated for the services we're going to provide to this.
Yeah.
Phase 1, phase 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll follow up, communicate that we're going to have to move forward. The will of my council is that we shall have a pilot in place before we authorize a CO on that property. I don't want to speak for yourself, but that's the only thing that we can do. We hold the power to ever give a certificate of occupancy because if they don't have services in place.
If we don't utilize that power, we're going to lose it.
Yeah, for sure. No, plus it's not a reasonable system it's not a system that can even get close to maintaining if we don't have a reasonable fair share for the infrastructure.
So, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to have Councilor Garbone
Take over for a minute.
I have not. I need to.
Okay.
My lunch is not sitting well with me, so I'm gonna. Can I pass the torch?
Sorry to hear that, and yes, you may. And I was going to say that if we can skip a little faster, our city attorney is with us. He's got a 7 o'clock meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna let you take over for a
We
few
can
minutes.
sit here.
No, he can go, and y'all release him, but he's only available till 7. So
Okay.
I'm just.
Well, you got 20 minutes to finish this thing.
You're
I
gonna
got 20
take
minutes.
over right now. I'm
Okay.
gonna use the leading room. I wanna keep going, and will you make note that the mayor is leaving the room for a few minutes?
Okay, so David, you guys have your marching orders?
Yes,
All right.
yes, thank you. All right, I think the next one is it 8? Is this the school board one?
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
Sure is.
so very quickly, I want to point out a couple things, and I recognize, and I've got great respect for Joe Monahan. We meet regularly, communicate, and he's a great sort of neighborhood watch person.
Good.
But I do want to point out that it's not. This is a very tough subject when you talk about the urban renewal, where we are. And so I wanted to very quickly address some of the questions that came up. For instance, he's like, hey, I watched the school board meeting and, they couldn't even answer like how many units were going to be built, how many were going to be 2-3 bedroom. The reality is that we had met multiple times with school board members and administration, and that they were giving us questions in advance so that we could go and further the conversation. And so this particular meeting, when we showed up, after having answered many pages of question, they had yet another page, and they just simply, and we the answer we gave is, we can't tell you exactly right now, this moment, how many apartments would be in that development. And the reason is, and see, this is the salient point, is that we had modeled it out, but we have not gone out and paid, a lot of money to an architect to build something or design something. But we had to model it because we had to get through the federal grant, and then we had also performed some state grant models. So we actually knew what the configuration is, and that we had used a developer in Reedsport that had just finished some apartment complexes. and also OCHS to help us model a lot of data that we were using when we pulled this together. So the question was, we knew that. We also heard that, you know, we feel duped because someone during public comment used the word transitional housing, okay? We told the school board that these would be folks with lease agreements. We followed up in all of the documents. I think there's 49 pages of documents plus answers, plus additional documents. We mentioned, Mr. Monahan mentioned new city hall. There's never been a concept. In fact, we told the school board that the Urban Renewal Agency nor the city council has authorized tearing down City Hall, that it was part of, do we include a public project, which means can you have a public building within a URA district as part of a project? And we said that we knew that this building needed a minimum of $8 million of seismic, that it was energy inefficient, it was bad use of space, that our police department was spread in 8 or 9 different places, which doesn't pass muster with the state audit, that all of the reasons for that we could include along Union very efficient city hall spaces underneath the parking garage, which is also conceptual, that you would come in off McPherson. And so there was never any plans nor anything told to the school board that said, we're going to have a Taj Mahal City Hall. Actually, we're going to be storefront, basically, overlooking in the concept under a parking garage. There was a statement about published apartment prices. Because we had modeled, and we also knew that this was affordable workforce housing on our website. In fact, I sent it to Mr. Monahan, and he had confirmed receipt with a nice thank you. Studio apartments based on salaries of the workers, educators, public safety workers, logistic workers, healthcare workers. Studios were estimated at the time that we had made the submittals between $850 to $1,000 per month. A 1-bedroom was $950 to $1,200 a month. A 2-bedroom was between $1,200 and $1,500 a month, and a 3-bedroom was between $1,400 and $1,800 a month. And so it was absolutely affordable workforce housing. And then I hear folks talk about the frozen base without understanding that the base is already frozen. It has been frozen since 1994. And so the increment, nominal as it is, means that it was a continuation of an existing base. There was 0 new taxes. And the question came up, well, then how are services being paid? The same way they are now. They're being paid through the general fund, and a portion of those that serve the district are also then being billed to the, urban renewal. For instance, it's like, you're billing $100,000 to the URA. You're doggone right, because we are actually providing services over and above what they're paying taxes, and we have to be able to recoup that. And so with that said, we're going to hand it over to Jeff, who has some additional information that he wants to provide you.
I just have just a few what I would call slides here to go over with you. But one is, it's just for a debrief based on the vote. It gets clear that we're at a time when the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency needs to evaluate all its options. And I'll have one of my slides tonight to kind of present some options to you. I don't think there's any decisions that need to be made tonight, but we want to be able to present you what we see are options at this point. I think the processes around urban renewal agencies are challenging to explain.
For sure.
And there's a very steep learning curve. And so when you have all of that converging and then trying to explain a very complex thing.
In a short
Bits-
presentation at a meeting of people who have other things to talk about.
Yes, bits and pieces can get taken and
Yeah.
some may be factual, some maybe not, but people are gonna like start to form judgments as they're learning. And it is a hard subject to learn, and that's why we engaged a specialist to help us learn it. And I think that it's just a very steep learning curve. I think there's raised awareness for urban renewal now in our community. I think it's a hot topic in our community, and so that awareness isn't a bad thing. People talking with all different types of points of view. I think it's also important that we keep thinking of solutions for North Bend. The idea behind this one was to give the Urban Renewal Agency and the citizens of North Bend an asset that was income producing and to help alleviate some of the pressures on the city's general fund to help pay for some of the things that would add vitality and to our city, and in the process do so with adding and addressing a very much stated need for new housing in North Bend. The other reason why I believe it was a good idea is because it really didn't cost anything new other than extending something that's already in place. And in fact, amending it would have actually saved taxpayers
Yeah,
dollars.
that North Bend urban renewal
Special levy would have gone.
levy would have dropped away. Who gets that? Is that just the city of North Bend, or is that everybody in the county, or is that, who is?
That's the citizens of North Bend.
Citizens of
And
North
it's-
Bend.
And that's citywide.
Yeah.
It's not just within the urban renewal boundary. That was a citywide special levy. Gets taxed on the same tax base that the city's property taxes do. Also learned, I think we live in a community with many points of view. And that's not a bad thing. I think there's, I think listening and trying to learn from others is really important. I think, that we all want to make good decisions, I think, for North Bend. But I think there are very many in this community with different points of view on whether it's government, whether it's urban renewal, the role of government. There's a whole host of views. Also think that it's very important that the city of North Bend will continue to support its schools and its students. I think people are watching what happened. It's very public, and I think that maintaining our integrity and our support of the schools and students is highly, highly important to do. And would hope there's, that there's fears in the community that we would not do that. I think we should really just try and put those aside. And it's incumbent upon the city to really, I think, carry ourselves with honesty and integrity in all of our dealings. So, that being said, I wanted to just put together just a few pieces of data here, slides, just to kind of put the whole thing of urban renewal in a little more context for everybody. We have 7 urban renewal agencies within Coos County. They raise, and this is from the 2024-2025 summary of assessment and tax rolls from Coos County. Those urban renewal agencies were authorized to and assessed and imposed taxes of almost $5 million. North Bend's portion of that is about $566,000. So it's not, it's a piece of that pie, but it's not a significant piece of the pie. The 2 largest are really the Coos Bay Urban Renewal, and they actually have 2 of them. And both of those are over $1 million that they raised for Coos Bay. But I think that helps put kind of the lay of the land in terms of the total URA dollars that are out there being generated every year in a little context. This slide has two bars on it, and it's really showing two different numbers. And some of this is really to address this whole frozen base thing, because I heard a lot about frozen base, and how is all this increase like above the frozen base? You know, why is that fair just for it to go to urban renewal? Well, let's look and see what we have here. The orange bar, and these are all the districts in the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency boundary. And so all of them have a tax base. And so that orange bar is their taxable assessed value base. So you can see in a lot of cases that's, you know, it's in the billions of dollars. The URA excess that is taxed, that's how the URAs derive their money, is on that excess value, is represented by that little yellow bar. So you can see the majority of the taxable base is going towards the intended taxing districts that they're, you know, formed to serve. It is a very, very tiny portion of the assessed value, you know, the increase, is actually taxed where those amounts for the URA are generated. It is very small. In fact, if you look at it, in North Bend, the percentage of the urban renewal excess value to the total assessed value is under 5%.
I'm sorry if you already explained this, I just
Yeah.
don't get it. So when we're talking about excess value and we're talking about the 3% maximum mandated increase, where do those overlap? Is the excess value, does that mean it's a tax on top of whatever the?
No. When you look at the tax summary for each of the taxing districts, for instance, in the city of North Bend, you're going to see a total assessed value that is like the total assessed value that is going to be have our tax levied on it for the city.
Okay.
What comes off of that is the excess value or assessed value for what's in the urban renewal boundary. And in our case, that's about $39 million. What that is, there's a separate calculation just for the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency, just for the city of North Bend, and it calculates that for each of the different taxing districts that are within the taxing authority. So you're really starting with the taxable assessed value, and then you carve off this little piece of that. In this case, it's $39 million of value in just the North Bend column right here. And it's that 39 million is taxed for the URA, and then the remainder, the 871 million less that 39 million, is what then the city then levies its taxes for the general fund and for what it does every year in terms of providing government services. And I showed that for each one of our taxing districts that are sitting within in the URA. So you can see it's really a very, very minor part of the overall assessed value that is really being hit or targeted for URA. But I thought it was really helpful to put in perspective. It's not as if we're freezing the entire base of the city and then taking all the excess value over that and spending it on URA. That's not what's occurring. Not what's occurring at all. So I think I just wanted to give it some context in terms of how much URA dollars are generated in Coos County, and then really what is that taxable base that the URA is hitting every year in relation to the overall base.
Why do they call it excess value?
Right, so when the URA was set up, there was a value of that, assessed value that was been frozen.
Yeah.
And that was way back in 1994. Since then, we've had increases in assessed value. So when you look at the calculation like today, for instance, it's not quite, but it's about 50-50. So you've got your frozen base at about, 40 some million, and then you got your excess value over that, that's also at about 40 million. So that frozen base is still in our taxable base for the city. It's just that excess piece that's being carved off and then taxed for the URA purposes versus being taxed for municipal services for the city of North Bend.
And when you say carved off, what I think that's associated with is there's a year, you establish the URA, you don't get anything that year. You have to wait a whole year. And then that increase from the whole thing to the next year is what the URA gets.
Yes.
That's the increment. So that's the excess value. And it takes a year to find out what that little piece is going to be.
Yes.
And then from there on,
Takes
it's
another
based
year,
on that.
and
It's
another
based,
year,
yeah,
another
yeah.
year,
But
yes.
that first year determines that
Yes.
bit.
Yeah.
And that's the excess value? Okay.
Yes, and that's the
Okay,
excess value
thank you,
that then
Professor.
is deducted from the taxable assessed value of your taxing district.
Okay.
So, just a little, just to give some context, I thought that they were kind of, I think, good things to have out in front, just to kind of put some things in perspective, so you have facts in front of you. And again, this is all information anybody can look up right from the tax summary rolls on Coos County's website. So what are some options? These are in no particular preference or order, but I just am throwing them out there as items for you to think about. We could let the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency simply expire. It's been around for 30 years. You could let it expire and run out its purpose, but that is an option
So
you can consider.
if that occurs, how much in tax dollar
We lose a
leaves
huge
North Bend
chunk.
and now goes elsewhere?
Yeah.
About probably close to $300,000
Each year plus. Yeah.
year,
Yeah,
yeah.
we don't want that.
Yeah. The two largest, payers into is the city of North Bend is one, and then also the North Bend School District is the other one. But again, they are backfilled by the state for there, so they really aren't losing anything. We could have a next option be to status quo. Just limit spending to minimal projects, keep doing what it's doing, but just status quo for now, until we can reevaluate further. We could increase the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency maximum indebtedness by 20%. So we do have that ability and authority to do that.
That does not require any other government agency's approval.
Or it could do that on its own.
We generate roughly about 4 million.
Could sell the annex building property and reinvest the sale proceeds into downtown revitalization. So it is an option. Could investigate possibilities for a public-private partnership for new housing. So see if there's an investor out there that would want to make an investment into North Bend and partner with the Urban Renewal Agency. We could transfer the annex building and property to the Housing Authority. It's an option.
What, can the housing authority build workforce housing? Like, can the,
No, they would probably, they have a variety of mechanisms. Most commonly, you see tax credit type properties built.
why would we do that when they're not gonna pay for services on the other building?
It's a very good question.
I mean,
It's an option.
Yep, I'm just throwing it out as an option.
good job,
Yes.
good job. It's nice to have one to throw out automatically. No,
I want to make note that we are at the 7 o'clock hour.
fine.
And so I think, well, what's important about this is we don't have to make any decisions tonight. And I think one of the big takeaways over the last week or so is that there's still, based off of the questions that we're getting and the misinformation that we're seeing out there, there's still a lot of information that we need to get to the public to help them understand this better.
For sure.
And so if we can take our time working through making sure that people get the right answers and understanding what this is, and it's, we're still getting the same, like, I don't want a new tax type of comment, that shows me we still have a lot of work to do. Maybe it's another URA town hall with a fancy name to get people to come without using the word poop.
Why can't we use the word poop? It would probably show up.
But that, my
humor.
question to you is there anything that you need from us, like, right now? Like, we don't have to make any of these decisions tonight, right?
You do not.
And I think, is it probably good to give the staff some direction to, I have heard from this council numerous times that housing is a top priority. And it's probably, I'm gonna guess, the number one question that you get asked is public safety and housing. Because I know it's my number one thing.
Yeah.
And so most likely, we're gonna probably come to some sort of conclusion that we wanna move forward with some sort of workforce housing specifically.
For sure.
Project. And so if there's other things that you can kind of keep your eye on in the meantime, let's just start like doing some more information campaigns. I think that there's, even what you shared tonight, would be good to get out there.
I just, on this note, so before the school board, I called a variety of people I know and trust and walked them through what I understood. And the complexity gets in the way, unfortunately, and there's no way to get around that 100%. But I do know that we could probably make some strides forward for this reason. So when I spoke to sciencey, mathy people that I know, they said very specifically things like, the school board needs every dollar, and this is not a for sure thing. And not understanding the shared risks that we all have. And things like looking at the slides from the presentation. They're not gonna go watch anything. They're gonna look at the slides and saying like, well, this first slide, the school board, it looks like the school board's gonna lose 10 million, and on the second slide, we're gonna give them back 2. How does that make sense? How is that the school board pays nothing? Because the words weren't, things like, the state will backfill this, or something like that, and, those are the comments, like, I think that what is our time limit? When is the last school board meeting that could possibly say yes to this? Whether it's a new school board or a current one earlier, what is our time limit for that 4 million?
We've been engaged with our federal delegation this week. I anticipate I'll be having a conversation with them tomorrow because the words reappropriation have come to play. That's never
Meaning
good
we'll take
verbiage.
that 4 million, and give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
Yeah. If this project's not moving forward, there are things that, the nice thing is what you all had tonight is called a dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay? This has been our experience. We show up to a school board meeting. They have already peppered us with 10, 20, 30 pages. By the time we were done, 49 pages of questions. And then you show up and they give you more questions. It has not been a dialogue. No one, I would say that, there are 2 members that have been so engaging with questions. Michelle Roberts has been one of them. She would be very engaged. Michelle has been very engaging on the questions. Others were conspiracy theories or putting hands up saying transitional housing, you're going to do eminent domain. This is going to end
Threats
up as
and
just a
intimidation,
homeless shelter. You're building 67 units in the park down here, Simpson Park. I mean, go back and look at the questions. And so that's what should occur. There should be dialogue. And more importantly, as Jeff and I said today, it's like, if the plan doesn't work for you, what changes would you like? What's going to help us get there? Those are dialogues, those are conversations. Instead, we got, take any reference to the word school out of this. We don't want to be in the plan. The next was, had to deal with eminent domain. So we updated the plan to take out the school district. That's not dialogue. And so if you ask the question, 4 million, if you can't have a government body and a government body have dialogue, you're not going to get anywhere. And I'll close out on this. That $4 million comes with stipulations. The stipulations, just as I told the school board, was that it has to be workforce housing, that they would have annual leases, that it would be based on a percentage of income in those fields, that there would be no new tax increase. In fact, there'd be lower taxes, that most likely obviously it's the Urban Renewal Agency and the city making decisions, but from a staff standpoint, we saw this project being transferred into the land bank, that we would then have a third-party management company actually operate it, and that there would be a sinking fund so that upkeep would be figured out. Jeff and I had spent countless hours and also worked with a gentleman by Mike Couch on really working a lot of the numbers. And once we had an asset, we also told the school board we had 2 lots across the street, and that we could then use this asset to then leverage the potential condo project over there, because the community's ready for condos based on our housing needs assessment. Those condos then would be sold. And then that money would then come back in as program income back into the urban renewal. And then that program income could take care of the vital services, so that we could take care of the paving and other critical infrastructure needs in the Urban Renewal Agency, because we know that the general fund and the other funds can't sustain as enough. So we put together collectively what was a win-win-win. And yes, I get it. It's like, well, what do you mean, you can't show me a blueprint? That's because you also have to operate with trust. And that's what Boomer Wright, our state representative, said to the chairman and the school board. You have to establish trust somewhere. And unfortunately, that's not what's happened overall in this process. And we're here today. And so no decision has to be made today. We'll continue to answer questions on our website. It's been interesting, some of the hoopla that's come out, but we look past it, and we'll continue to give answers that are accurate, that are backed by information that's can be sourced, and we'll see where we go as we continue to look for how to fulfill the housing issue in the city without burdening taxpayers.
Yeah,
Thank you. Sound like a plan?
yep, thank
Okay.
you for this.
All right.
Don't take this slide down for a moment.
Postpone going over the.
So the next thing on the agenda is just to review the city council agenda.
It's
And-
small enough, we can just go through it tomorrow.
Do we, I know we have our community
Okay, get up.
who's been here for it feels like 4 hours.
So have we.
2.5 hours. Let's just take kind of like a quick look at this. Like tomorrow looks pretty straightforward. We have like the consent calendar and public comment. We know we've got some information about repairs on Mead. I feel comfortable enough if the council has any questions, they can reach out to the city manager about that, and then we can look at it tomorrow night during the meeting. But I know that we do have tomorrow night is number 6, which is the Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant application. So we are 12 minutes past our allotted time. I think
I'll be very quick.
we have left, our attorney has left the call. So,
So, Madam Mayor and Council, I'm here on behalf of North and Main Street Program, and I did answer these questions. Councilor Garboden gave me a couple questions to answer. Basically, in 2015, the Oregon legislature approved the sale of lottery bonds to go to these revitalization grants. So it's been around since 2015. No, I'm reading them.
Where, are we looking?
No,
No, not yet.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
We got some questions from a counselor, and so we just want to make sure that we let you know what the question is when she then answers it.
Got it.
Yes.
My apologies. So it was asked of me to give a brief overview of the revitalization grant and kind of how it works. So the State Historic Preservation Office is a division of Oregon Parks and Recreation, and they are the ones who house this grant. They're the ones that distribute the funds as well as review the applications before they are awarded. The revitalization grant, the question is what specific things can the grant cover? A big range of things, property acquisition, upper floor rehabilitation, code compliant, housing, repairs, facades, you name it, whatever is gonna help align with your downtown goals and the revitalization of your downtown. So the next question is how is the applications reviewed? So North and Main Street, I know we're a newer program, but we did put forth a lot of the same grant guidelines and stipulations that come from the actual grant from the state into a pre-application. So some of the larger projects that people might be interested in developing, those are gonna take a little bit more detailed because you're looking at doing a brand new project. So those bigger projects go before a review committee that Main Street took one person from each committee to review that, and then that is referred to the board. So ultimately, all the applications will come forth to the board, and then since our program is housed under the city, you as city council will have the final say in how that application moves forward for the actual state application. So that is that process. When we're looking at, the question is, what's the critique and how is it considered? We have to look at things that is important to the state. This grant is very competitive, it's very intricate, it takes a lot of staff time. So us as a Main Street program, our goal is to vet the projects, their readiness, their ability to complete, like a vetted business plan, what's the community need for this project? And then we have to look at, is that something we feel so strong to put forth the staff time to fill out the application for the state. And so that's what we do is we vet the projects. Any that don't come through as strong, then we look at how can we help the applicant if they're interested next year, or sorry, it's a biannual, so not next year, but the year after, and applying again and bringing their project forward. So that is most of, does that cover? Perfect, okay. And the reason that Main Street is so involved is this is a reimbursement grant. So, you have to complete what you put in for the grant, and then the state reimburses you. So we have to do progress reports, that's all staff time as well. It's a 70-30 match, and so the state will cover 70% of the project. This is the only grant that the Oregon Main Street offers in which the program has to be the applicant. So in a sense, we are a pass-through for the applicant at the local level. We have to apply to the state. If you own a building downtown and you want to do something, you can't just apply yourself, they won't accept it. So that's why we are so hands-on in working with these applicants and vetting these projects to move forward.
Okay.
So with that being said, we've gone through a process, and one of the options, I know Reedsport has done this, is the program will pick a narrative or a theme per se for the grant, and they compile different projects underneath one application. So, for us, retention, business retention, vitality, taking care of our historic district, these buildings, making them viable so we can still use them. Yes, new projects are great as well, but how do we take care of these current business owners and these buildings? So we created an application, and I did, you got it before the meeting there, and this project is called Stronger Spaces. Yeah, and so we really worked with our code department, as well as of late, the fire marshal has been coming through and looking at these buildings and pointing out some things that are not code compliant. So we really broke this down, and we're really excited about this, to offer this to our building owners downtown. We received 10 applications. Everything ranges from non-existing heating units, which is definitely not code, to failing units, a few ADA accessible projects, some new entryway doors to be code compliant, as well as suppression hood system. And so these applicants have gone through our pre-application. They have provided quotes. And so with your blessing, this is our top pick for moving forward with the application for the state to assess these buildings. So is there any questions on that Stronger Spaces grant application?
I'm not clear what you're asking. You're saying like this,
Yeah, so we're here to ask you, you want to at least put one project forward, right? We can put two projects forward. I have a second one to talk to you about here in just a second.
okay.
But we basically are coming to say, look, this is what we plan to do. This is the due diligence we've done. We have your support to now actually apply to the state.
Yeah,
With
Or the
concept.
stronger spaces.
Yes.
Okay, but you're, go ahead.
Was this something generated by the city? You went out and you contacted these different,
Yeah, yep, so we have a listserv for our building and business owners, and that they received this pre-application, and then they came to us with, we were
Ideas.
shocked at how much of a response we got from
That's
this.
so great.
So you had 10 applicants already for stronger spaces.
Yes, that,
And so, but you're not, so then tonight's ask is like, you're saying, are you okay with moving forward?
yes, I'm asking you if we can put forward this grant now to the state.
did you receive any other grant applications?
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
So-
so you're saying, will you move forward with this for the 10 people that have applied?
correct.
We
Okay,
love this.
but we're not looking at those 10 businesses. You're just saying you
Right.
have it packaged up,
Yep.
you're ready to do it.
They'll be compiled into one application.
Into one application, gotcha.
And the state is aware that programs do this, and they said that this is applicable, that we can put a compilation together.
Okay, that would sound amazing
Yeah.
for those businesses, okay.
These are beautiful
Does that
summaries.
make
They're
sense
really
to
good.
everybody
Yeah.
there? Okay, so that's one ask.
Correct.
We'll be voting on that tomorrow night, or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so we're
Yes.
just getting, it's just question time now.
Correct.
Okay, that's good.
And then we did have, on the last page that you have there, we did have a application come through that filled out our pre-application. This is for an individual who is in contract negotiations to purchase the Liberty Pub building. The reason we're bringing this forward to you is specifically because it involves housing. And I
Yeah.
know that's one of your top priorities is housing. And so it's not a giant project, it's about 4 units.
So what?
In an unutilized space, right now the space is just storage, so that would be
Yeah.
a full revitalization. And then a lease out for the Liberty Pub space down below
Yeah.
to have a business down there to obtain a restaurant. So the ask of the applicant is for us to move forward the grant for the property acquisition portion of it. So they're asking to use those funds to buy the building, but if you move this forward and it goes through the state, there will be an MOU that if this, with the completion, they're buying this property to add the housing. So that is, it's not just like, hey, let's buy a building. It is saying, we are gonna buy this building so we can put housing in.
The applicant.
So there's a string on it.
Can you do both of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we can put 2 grants forward. We always suggest, as in the legislative file of the description of why we're here, is to make sure it aligns with your goals. Main Street, like I said, we would love to put the stronger spaces forward. If you are okay and feel confident with both, we can look at putting both forward. But we really limit it to 2 because it is extensive staff time for these grants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love these. I love these
And
summaries.
just to clarify too, that like the city, this is a pass-through. We help obtain the grant application, we put it forth, then those funds are distributed to the investor. So this is not our funds going towards buying a building, I wanna make that very
Right.
clear.
Or would you be landlords?
Or landlords, it
Yeah.
would be passed over to them.
Do we get like a percentage for being the Passover?
No.
No, this
They
is
used
just.
to,
They
they
use
used to give
6%.
6%. They no longer do that.
Mhm.
I understand Coos charges a 6% administrative fee as a bachelor. We could too. But we can't create a new fee. A couple salient points, on the code enforcement thing, it's kind of actually brilliant. We actually, the fire marshal, the fire chief can speak to this, but also our building official folks. These are legitimate, actual things that have to be taken care of. And so, in fact, some of the projects, the fire marshal has been back to town 2, maybe 3 times, at least 2 times on. And so there's that. On the acquisition piece, there are steps that come with this. So they can't just sell this property for 20 years without state approval?
40.
40 years. They
Hey, they're
cannot
locked
sell
in.
that property for 40 years without state approval. And that's in a contract. And so, everything
They've
comes
gotta
with
be here to
steps.
stay,
And
they gotta,
so,
yeah,
and
that's
part
right.
of it
Okay,
will
flip
be
it.
that you have to do what you say. Very much like Angelina's, everyone thinks Angelina's got 200,000 and they did it. That grant, when it changed, we had to go back, we got an amendment that said we can put another business in there. By the way, yes, we are negotiating on a potential business that could take that and then would move forward. But they're not sure that they want the 200,000 because of the 40-year step. So they might actually do the project and instead ask for an urban renewal revitalization grant, because that doesn't come with those things. And so that particular one, just letting you know, you're not, approving the individual projects, you're approving staff to move forward to submit the applications on behalf of the business owners and or tenants or anticipated owners. And then if it's approved, the state then actually has to do contracts. And then there are subcontracts. And so that's where we're involved.
And do we need a vote or just a?
Okay, so
Tomorrow you will.
Tomorrow night, yeah.
we could either support one or both?
Yeah.
We can
Correct.
support both.
Hey, now we're
Go for both.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go for both.
Yeah, and like I said, I wish we could put every
Yeah,
project
smack it.
forward and, we just have to look at, projects that are gonna align with your goals and
Yeah.
this is the ones we color, so.
You're bring back liberty.
Yeah. And I know I always say one last thing. We're in a great position because the state used to do 200,000 every 2 years. This round, they actually had more lottery dollars, and so they said 400,000, and they said, we don't anticipate, because of a recent trend, as many. So they actually encouraged us to put in 2,
That'd be amazing.
and we have shared the process throughout. So I really applaud Stephanie and the Main Street program. They actually said, we want to come up with this concept. They took it to the state and said, hey, we're about to go through the application process. What do you think? What's the feedback? And so I really applaud them trying to align our initiatives with your goals with available grant funds, and that's exactly what's happened, so.
Okay.
The teamwork is amazing.
We'll whack it.
If I don't end this before 3 hours, Counselor Garbone's never coming back. Meeting adjourned.
It has to come back.
No, I don't.
Did we stop recording?
Yeah.
We're out
It stopped.
kids in the school.
Have we stopped the recording?
Tummy is.
Hey, we're getting Olive Garden downtown.
Yes.
With the apartments upstairs, Olive Garden in the bottom, baby.